Why did the leaders stop listening? Have you ever wondered why someone, especially someone powerful, stops listening to others? It's a question that echoes through history, touching every empire that eventually crumbled. Leaders, at some point, might get too comfortable. They might start believing they know everything, or that their way is the only way. This isn't just about ignoring a suggestion, it's about a deeper disconnect. Sometimes, power itself can be tricky. It can build walls around a person, making it harder for honest voices to reach them. People around powerful leaders might only tell them what they want to hear, not what they need to hear. This creates a kind of echo chamber. The leader only hears their own thoughts reflected back. It's like being in a room where every sound just bounces back to you, and you never hear anything new or different. Think about a time you were working on a group project, and one person decided they knew best, refusing to listen. Maybe they thought their idea was perfect, or didn't want to admit they could be wrong. What happened? Often the project didn't turn out as well as it could have. Good ideas often come from many different minds, from different perspectives. In a way, it's like a ship's captain who stops looking at the maps or listening to the lookout. They might feel so confident, so sure of their path, that they miss the icebergs ahead. The sea here represents the changing world, and the true needs of the people. Leaders who stop listening forget that even the strongest foundations need constant checking. They forget that people, no matter their title, are part of a larger system. To truly lead is to stay open, to stay curious, and to always be ready to learn from those you serve. This act of listening is a quiet strength, and sometimes it's the very thing that keeps any group from falling apart. It reminds us that wisdom often comes not from speaking, but from hearing. Was the money running out for good? Imagine a vast empire, stretching far and wide. It has mighty armies, grand cities, and a powerful leader. But here's the thing, all of that costs money. Not just gold coins, but the belief that those coins actually mean something. So, was the money running out for good? This question often haunted empires, more than any invading army. It wasn't just about how many coins were in the treasury. It was about trust. Think about it this way. Money is just a promise. A coin promises you can buy something. A banknote promises it has value. When an empire's money started failing, it meant people stopped believing in that promise. They didn't trust their leaders to keep the economy stable. They worried their hard-earned coins wouldn't buy them bread tomorrow. This could happen if the empire spent too much on wars, or if floods ruined crops, or if leaders became greedy. When people lose faith in the money, they lose faith in the system, and eventually, in the empire itself. Here's a simple example. Imagine your favorite video game. Let's say you earn in-game currency for completing quests. Now, what if the game designers suddenly made it so easy to get currency that everyone had millions, but there was nothing good to buy anymore? Or what if the items you bought last week were suddenly worthless? That in-game money, even if you had tons of it, would feel like nothing. It wouldn't mean anything. It would lose its value because the promise of what it could buy was broken. That's how it was for empires. When the promise of money broke, everything else could unravel. It wasn't just a financial crisis. It was a crisis of trust, a deep crack in the belief system that held a society together. The money running out for good wasn't just about empty pockets. It was about empty hopes, and a fading belief in a shared future. It was a sign that something deeper was truly broken. Could they feed all those people? Imagine you're in charge of a really big family. Not just your own, but a whole town, or even a country. The first thing you'd worry about, every single day, is, what are we going to eat? This wasn't just a small problem for ancient empires. It was the biggest, quietest challenge they faced. How do you grow enough food, move it to everyone who needs it, and make sure it doesn't spoil? When an empire grew, its population grew too, and hungry people can't build roads, fight wars, or even think about art or science. They only think about food. Think about ancient Rome. It was huge. Millions of people lived there, especially in the city itself. They didn't have supermarkets. They needed grain from Egypt, oil from Spain, wine from France, all brought by ship across rough seas. One bad harvest, one storm, one enemy ship, and suddenly riots could explode. This wasn't about fighting a war. It was about preventing one from within. The question of food wasn't just about survival. It was about stability. It was about whether the empire would hold together, or simply crumble from the inside out. Here's the thing, Think about your own body. You eat a few times a day, right? If you miss a meal, you get grumpy. You can't focus. Now, imagine a whole city of people feeling that way, all at once, for days. It's like a massive machine that needs constant fuel. If the fuel stops, the machine grinds to a halt. It doesn't matter how strong the walls are or how brave the soldiers are. If the people are starving, everything else falls apart. So, when we look back at these powerful empires, we often think about their grand buildings or their fierce armies. But deep down, their true strength, and sometimes their hidden weakness, lay in something much more basic. A loaf of bread, a cup of grain, a simple meal. The silent question, can we feed everyone today, was always there. It reminds us that even the greatest powers are built on the most fundamental needs, and ignoring those needs can lead to a quiet, often forgotten, kind of fall. Did anyone think about the future? When powerful leaders stood on top of their empires, making choices that changed everything, did they ever really stop and ask, what will this look like in 50 years, or 100? It's a simple question, but it holds a deep truth. Empires often crumbled, not just from outside attacks, but from inside. They fell because no one seriously considered the long game. Think about it. Sometimes it's easy to focus on what feels good right now. Maybe you spend all your allowance on snacks today. That feels great. But what if you need that money later for a school trip? If you only think about the present, you might run into trouble later. Empires worked similarly. A ruler might cut down all forests to build ships, winning a war. Great for that battle. But what happens when all the wood is gone? What about the soil that washes away without trees, making food harder to grow? Choices for today created huge problems for tomorrow. It's like building a sandcastle at the water's edge. It looks amazing, but the tide will wash it away. History shows this again and again. Some empires taxed their people so much for wars that citizens became poor and hungry, leading to anger and rebellion years later. Others built grand monuments but forgot to invest in clean water or education. They focused on showing off their power now, not on the health or smarts of future generations. So, the quiet question became, what happens when our resources run out? When our people lose hope? These whispers about the future often became the storms that brought mighty empires down. It reminds us that real strength isn't just about what you conquer today, but what you build to last for many tomorrows. It's about planting trees whose shade you might never sit under. That's a deep kind of wisdom. Why did the people feel left out? Have you ever been in a group where your ideas just didn't seem to matter? Where decisions were made, and you had to go along, even if they didn't make sense for you? Here's the thing, people feel left out when they don't have a real say. This feeling grows when important decisions are made, far away, by people who don't understand the daily struggles of ordinary folks. It's not just about money or power. It's about dignity, about being seen and heard. Think about ancient empires, big and powerful, kings and queens, noble families. They lived in grand palaces. But what about the farmers, the craftspeople, the soldiers who made up most of the population? Did their voices ever really reach those in power? Most of the time, no. Laws were made, taxes collected, and wars fought, often without real input from the people most affected. This silence, this exclusion, slowly chipped away at loyalty. They began to feel like outsiders in their own lands. They were treated as tools, not as human beings with thoughts and needs. Imagine your school's student council. They make rules about lunch or clubs. But here's the problem. What if the council only ever talked to the same few students? Maybe the star athletes, or the kids with the highest grades. They never ask anyone else what they think. So, if you're not in that group, and they make a rule that doesn't work for you, how would you feel? You might feel ignored, like your daily experience doesn't count. You might even start to care less about what the school does, because it doesn't seem to care about you. This feeling of being unseen, of being forgotten, it's a quiet poison. It slowly breaks down trust. When enough people feel this way, when they believe their leaders don't care, or worse, don't even see them, then even the strongest walls can crack. Because a society, an empire, is only as strong as the connection between its people and their shared purpose. That purpose breaks when too many people are left alone in the dark. It reminds us that every voice holds a part of the truth, and every person's well-being truly matters. Was the army to spread out? Have you ever wondered if something can be too big? Empires, like living things, often grew. They conquered new lands, added more people, and their armies became vast. But sometimes, this very growth held a hidden problem. It's a bit like stretching a rubber band too far. It gets thinner and weaker until it snaps. For an army, being too spread out means soldiers and resources are stretched across huge distances. Imagine trying to protect a very long wall with only a few guards. Each guard would be far from the next. If trouble came, they couldn't help each other fast enough. Communication would be slow. Food and supplies would take ages to reach the front lines, often getting lost or stolen, or simply arriving too late to matter. This constant struggle made the empire's power thin, like a piece of paper, easily torn. Take the Roman Empire, for instance. It became massive, its borders reaching across continents. They had an incredible army, but they had to guard so much land. Soldiers were stationed thousands of miles apart, from cold northern forts to hot desert outposts. They couldn't quickly gather to face a threat in one place because they were needed everywhere else. This meant they were strong in many places, but truly strong nowhere. Here's the thing. Think about a student trying to manage too many big projects at once. Maybe they have a huge science fair project, a big history report, and lead a school play, all due at the same time. They might feel important, but their focus gets spread thin. They can't give their best to any single one. They'll likely make mistakes or burn out. That's how a widely spread army feels. So, here's what happened. An empire might look powerful from the outside, but if its strength is spread too thin, it becomes fragile. It's a quiet question that asks us to think about limits. Sometimes, true strength isn't found in how far you reach, but in how well you can hold on to what you already have. It reminds us that even the grandest ambitions need boundaries to remain strong, or they risk losing their very foundation. Could they trust their own guards? Imagine being a king or queen. You live in a huge castle, surrounded by wealth and power. You have enemies outside, sure, but you also have people sworn to protect you. These are your guards. They stand watch, day and night. They wear your colors. They carry your weapons. But here's the thing. What if the biggest threat wasn't from outside your walls? What if it was someone standing right next to you? This question haunted many rulers throughout history. They built their power on loyalty, but loyalty can be a tricky thing. Guards were supposed to be the ultimate shield. They knew the castle's secrets, the king's routines, where the escape routes were. They were literally holding the keys to the kingdom. So, if these trusted protectors turned against you, it wasn't just a betrayal. It was often the end of everything. A simple push, a whisper in the night, and an empire could crumble from within. Think about it like this. Imagine you're on a sports team, and you've practiced for months for a big game. You trust your teammates to pass the ball, to block, to cover. But what if, in the middle of the game, one of your own teammates suddenly started helping the other side? Not by accident, but on purpose. How would that feel? How could you ever win if the people you relied on the most turned out to be the very ones working against you? That feeling of shock, disappointment, and utter helplessness, that's what a ruler faced when their own guards betrayed them. It's a deep question about trust itself. Power looks strong from the outside, but it's always fragile on the inside. It rests on human connections, on promises, and on faith that people will do what they say they will. When that faith breaks, especially from those closest to you, the whole structure can fall apart. It reminds us that even the most secure positions can hide the greatest vulnerabilities, especially when those vulnerabilities come from within. Did new ideas get shut down? Imagine a quiet whisper, a thought so fresh it could change everything. But what happens when that whisper meets a loud, firm no? For centuries, new ways of thinking have bumped up against old traditions. People often find comfort in what they already know. A new idea, no matter how good, can feel like a threat. It might challenge how things are done. It might question who holds power. So, sometimes, those in charge, or those who are used to the old ways, they push back. They try to make the new idea go away. Don't think about history. When Galileo first said the Earth went around the sun, it was a huge new idea. Before him, everyone believed the Earth was the center. This new way of seeing the universe challenged big, powerful groups. His ideas were seen as dangerous because they went against what was already accepted. He faced serious trouble for sharing his truth. It wasn't about the truth itself, but about the comfort of the familiar, and about how hard it is for people to let go of old beliefs, especially when those beliefs give them power. Here's the thing, you might even see this in your own life. Maybe someone has a brilliant new way to organize a school project, but the group insists on doing it the old, harder way, just because that's how it's always been done. Or imagine a new trick in sports. It might seem strange at first. People might laugh, but if it works, it shows how a good idea can still break through, eventually. So, the question isn't just about whether ideas get shut down, it's about how we react when they do. It's about the quiet courage of those who still whisper their new thoughts, even when everyone else is shouting. Empires, and even small groups, often fall not just from outside attacks, but from refusing to listen to the new thoughts bubbling up within. Sometimes, the most powerful thing we can do is simply listen. And maybe, just maybe, let a new whisper become a mighty wind. Why did the rich get so much richer? Have you ever wondered why some people have so much, and others struggle? It's a question that echoes through every empire, every age. Here's the thing, it often comes down to how money works, and how societies built their rules around it. Imagine you have a small amount of money. If you invest it, that money can earn even more money. This new money can also be invested. It's like planting a seed that grows into a bigger plant, producing more seeds. This idea is called compounding. Your wealth doesn't just add up, it multiplies. Those who start with more money often see it grow much faster. Historically, this pattern became strong because of laws and customs. Think about ancient times when only certain families could own the best land or control all the trading ships. They had the seed, the land, the ships. Because they owned these, they earned all the profits. These profits let them buy more land or start bigger businesses. So, the gap between those who had a little and those who had a lot just kept widening. It wasn't always about working harder. Sometimes it was about having a head start, or owning the things that made wealth grow. It's like a tiny snowball rolling down a hill. It picks up more snow as it rolls, getting bigger and faster. The bigger it gets, the more snow it can easily gather. The same happens with wealth. Those who begin with more tend to see their wealth grow much faster and larger than those who start with very little. This isn't just about numbers, it's about how societies are shaped. It's about fairness, and what opportunities everyone gets. Thinking about this helps us understand why some powerful empires faced deep trouble. The distance between the rich and the poor sometimes became too vast. It makes us wonder what a truly balanced world might look like. Were the old ways still working? Have you ever stopped to think about why we do things the way we do? Sometimes, we keep going with a plan or a tradition just because that's how it's always been done. But what happens when the world around you changes and those old ways start to feel wrong? This was a huge question for empires. They had traditions that were hundreds, even thousands, of years old. Rules about how to lead, how to fight, how to live. These ideas were once very strong. They brought order and made people feel safe. But here's the thing, time moves on. New challenges appear, new enemies rise, new ways of thinking take root. Imagine a very old, strong bridge that crosses a river. For centuries, it carried everyone safely. It was the only way across. But then, cities grew on both sides. More and more people needed to cross, and heavier wagons rolled over it. The old bridge, built for simpler times, starts to creak and groan. It can't handle the new weight. It might even be dangerous. The people on either side have to ask themselves, is this old way of crossing still working for us now? An empire faced this question on a massive scale. Their old laws, their old ways of fighting wars, their old beliefs about who should rule, they were like that bridge. They worked for a long time. But then, new problems came along that the old ways just couldn't solve. Maybe a new weapon was invented, or a new religion began, or people started to demand more fairness from their rulers. Suddenly, what was once a source of strength became a heavy chain. It's a deep thought, isn't it? To question the very foundations you stand on means looking honestly at what's happening and realizing that sometimes even the most cherished traditions can become obstacles. Empires had to decide if they would stubbornly hold on to their past, or if they would bravely try to build something new, something that fit the present moment. It's a quiet reflection, but a powerful one, knowing when to let go of what was, for the sake of what needs to be. What if the neighbors attacked? Have you ever thought about what makes something truly strong, truly stable? Maybe a big tree, or a tall building. But what happens if something unexpected comes from outside? What if your strong house has a perfect roof, but a huge storm rolls in from the next town over. This is a question empires faced constantly. What if the neighbors attacked? For a long time, we often focus on why empires crumbled from the inside. Bad leaders, angry citizens, lack of money. But here's the thing. Many strong empires, even when they seemed solid within, also fell because of threats from beyond their borders. Think about the Roman Empire. They were powerful, with roads and laws spreading everywhere. But then, groups like the Goths and the Vandals, who lived just outside their lands, started pushing in. They weren't always organized armies in the way Rome understood. Sometimes they were people looking for new lands, or escaping troubles of their own. But their arrival was a massive challenge. It's a bit like a school. You might have great teachers and helpful students. Everyone gets along. But then, a new rule comes in from the district, or a different school starts a big competition. That external pressure, something you didn't create, forces everyone to adapt or risk falling behind. It tests your unity, your resources, and the ability to work together when the threat isn't from within your own hallways, but from the world outside. So, the question, what if the neighbors attacked, isn't just about war. It's about being prepared for the unknown, for the world beyond your comfortable walls. It's about understanding that peace is fragile, and that even the mightiest structures need to watch their borders. It makes you wonder, doesn't it, about the delicate balance of power, and how quickly things can change when forces beyond our control come knocking. It reminds us that even strength needs constant care, not just from within, but against the winds blowing from every direction. Did the taxes become too heavy? Have you ever wondered why money causes such big problems? It's a deep question for history. Every empire, from ancient Rome to powerful kingdoms, needed money. They needed soldiers to build cities and roads. Where did that money come from? The people, through taxes. Here's the thing about taxes. They are like the blood that keeps a body alive. Without them, a government can't do much. But what if you take too much blood? The body weakens. It can even collapse. For people long ago, taxes meant the difference between having enough and starving. Imagine a farmer working hard all year, growing food. Then, the government takes a huge part. He barely has enough. He might feel his hard work is stolen. It's not just about money. It's about fairness. It's about feeling part of a system that helps everyone. Think about a group project at school. Everyone should do their part. But what if you do most of the work, and others do almost nothing? Yet, you all get the same grade. Or what if you buy all the snacks for a party, but others eat most of them? That feeling of this isn't fair grows. When taxes become too heavy, it's a deep problem. People lose faith. They question if leaders truly care. And when enough people feel this way, it cracks the foundation of an empire. A quiet whisper first, then a shout. A heavy tax burden feels like a hand pressing down, making it hard to breathe. Until one day, the pressure becomes too much. This question, did the taxes become too heavy, asks if people felt respected. It asks if the burden was fair. For many empires, the answer decided their fate. It speaks to a delicate balance, what a government needs versus what its people can give. It's a question about trust, and how easily it can break. Why did people lose faith in the system? Have you ever trusted someone, really believed in what they promised, only for them to let you down? Maybe a friend said they'd help with homework, but then didn't show up. Or perhaps a game you loved changed its rules unfairly. That feeling of disappointment, of trust breaking, that's a bit like what happens when people lose faith in a system. Here's the thing. People expect their leaders, their governments, or the big ideas that run society to work for them. They expect fairness, protection, and a path to a better life. For a long time, maybe generations, things mostly feel stable. People follow the rules because they believe the system is good, or at least fair enough. They see it as a strong building that supports everyone. But what if that building starts to crack? What if the rules stop making sense, or only seem to benefit a few powerful people? When promises are broken again and again, when hard times hit and the system doesn't help, people start to question. They start to wonder if the whole structure is rotten, not just a little bit broken. This isn't just about small complaints. This is about a deep feeling that the very foundation of how society works is no longer trustworthy. Think about it like this. Imagine you have a favorite bike. You rely on it to get around. You trust that the wheels will spin, the brakes will work. But then, day after day, the chain keeps falling off, or the tires go flat for no reason. and the gears jam. At first, you fix it, but after a while, you stop trusting it. You might even feel angry, because something you depended on has failed you repeatedly. You look for another way to get around. It's a slow erosion, like water wearing away rock, until what was once solid feels hollow. And when enough people feel that emptiness, that deep doubt, the ground beneath an empire can start to tremble. It's a quiet question at first, then a louder one. Is this truly working for us? And that question, when answered with a resounding no, can change everything. It's a profound shift, a quiet giving up on what once seemed unchangeable. Was the ruler too proud to ask for help? Have you ever been in charge of something important, like a group project, and felt like you had to know all the answers? Like asking for help might make you look less smart. That feeling, that whisper, telling you to go it alone, can grow huge for a ruler. Imagine leading an entire empire. The weight of decisions rests on your shoulders. It's easy to believe you must always be strong, always right. This belief, when it hardens into pride, can become a ruler's biggest enemy. An empire is vast and complex, like a massive machine. No one person understands every part. Rulers need different eyes, different ideas. They need advisors brave enough to speak truth. But if a ruler is too proud, they might silence these voices. They dismiss warnings, believing their judgment is flawless. This blindness, born from ego, leads to terrible choices. It can push an empire down a path it can't return. Think about a sports team. The captain might be talented, but refuses to listen to the coach or teammates' ideas. They think their way is the only way to win. What happens? The team probably loses. Their pride, that need to be the sole star, hurts the whole group. It stops them from achieving victory together. So, it's not just about a king or queen far away. It's about how hard it is to admit we don't have all the answers. True strength often comes from knowing when to reach out, when to trust others, when to simply say, I need help. This simple act, this willingness to be vulnerable, can save a kingdom or anything important we build. Could they fix the land that was dying? What happens when the very ground that feeds an empire starts to give up? Imagine a time when people looked at their fields, once rich and green, now dry and cracked. This wasn't just a small problem. This was a deep question that threatened everything. Could they figure out how to bring life back to soil that seemed dead? Could they find new water when the old wells dried up? For many great civilizations, the answer to this question decided their future. They built huge cities and fed millions. But here's the thing, all that growth needed a lot of resources. They chopped down forests for wood, used up water for farms, and took minerals from the earth. Sometimes, they just took too much. The land couldn't heal fast enough. It was like taking all the good from a garden, year after year, without putting anything back. So here's what happened. The land got tired. It couldn't produce what people needed anymore. Think about your favorite video game. You have a special power-up, and you use it a lot because it's powerful. But what if using it also slowly damages your character, or makes the game world weaker each time? At some point, you'd have to ask, is it worth destroying the game itself? That's kind of how ancient leaders felt. They saw the result of taking too much, too fast. They faced a tough choice. Keep taking and risk ruin, or change their ways. And that's why it matters today. We still face this question. How do we live here without using up all its strength? The empires that fell often ignored the land's quiet cries. Maybe they thought they had endless supply, or that the problem would just go away. But the land always has the last word. It asks us, then and now, are you listening? Are you learning to live with it, or against it? This is a question about survival and respect for the world that holds us. Did the different groups get along? Have you ever wondered what makes a huge thing, like an empire, stay together? It's not just about strong armies or great leaders. Here's a deeper question. Did all the different people inside that empire actually get along? See, empires weren't just one type of person. They were often massive, built by conquering many lands. So, you'd have people with different languages, different religions, different ways of life, all living under one big umbrella. Think about ancient Rome. It ruled over people from North Africa, parts of Europe, and the Middle East. That's a lot of different cultures. For an empire to last, it needed more than just power. It needed some kind of shared understanding, or at least a way for these groups to exist without constant fighting. When one group felt unfairly treated, or their beliefs were ignored, or their voice wasn't heard. Quiet anger could start to grow, and over time, that anger could become a crack in the foundation. It's like trying to build a really tall tower. When some of the bricks don't fit well together, or they're pushing against each other. Think about your own school. Imagine you're doing a big group project, and your team has people from different friend groups, different interests. If some members only care about their own ideas, or if certain voices always get shut down, or if one person feels completely left out, what happens to the project? It probably won't turn out well, right? There will be friction, arguments, and less overall effort. The project weakens from the inside. Empires face this on a massive scale. If the people within the empire felt more loyal to their own small group than to the empire itself, that was a danger sign. The question, did the different groups get along, isn't just about being friendly. It's about how much shared purpose, how much fairness, and how much true belonging existed. Because when people feel truly disconnected, or even oppressed, the biggest structures can start to shake, not from outside enemies, but from the quiet rumbling within their own walls. It's a powerful lesson. Unity, or the lack of it, can decide everything. Why did the best people leave? Have you ever wondered why the most talented people leave? This question has echoed through history, weakening empires. Every society needs its brightest minds, its best builders. But what if those people start to pack their bags? It's not a simple move. It's like water draining from a pool. When capable people feel overlooked, unheard, or held back, they seek somewhere their talents are valued. Leaders might not listen to new ideas. Rules might feel unfair, or there's no room to grow. Sometimes, a society, meant as a home, feels like a cage. In history, this quiet exodus, sometimes called brain drain, caused huge problems. Imagine ancient Rome if its brilliant engineers and thinkers left because they felt stifled. What would happen to its roads, its ideas? The empire might stand, but it would lose its spark, becoming weaker, slower. Think of a school project. If the student great at drawing, or the organized one, feels their ideas ignored, or their work isn't noticed, they might stop trying or switch groups. The original group, without their skills, might finish, but won't be good, or might even fail. So, when the best people leave, it's more than a few individuals. It signals something is wrong. It means the spirit of creation and progress fades. A society thrives when it cherishes its people, giving them room to build. If it doesn't, even strong walls can't hold back the quiet departure of its vital parts. This silent question asks, what made our best people feel they had to go? Was building more walls enough? When facing a big problem, what do we often do first? We think about building a shield, or putting up a barrier. For ancient empires, this often meant building massive walls. The Great Wall, Hadrian's Wall, the walls of Constantinople, these were huge, incredible structures. They were meant to keep enemies out, to protect what was inside. People believed these walls would keep them safe. But here's the thing. History shows us a different story. Many of these empires, despite their mighty walls, eventually crumbled. Invaders often found a way over, under, or around, or they simply waited them out. But often, the real danger wasn't just from outside, it came from within. Walls can't stop hunger, or unfair rules, or people feeling ignored. Think about it this way. Imagine a really big project for school, something that feels too much. Your first thought might be to just ignore it. You might build a wall around yourself. You avoid the topic, don't open the book, pretend it's not there. You might even feel safe for a little while, protected from the stress of the work. But does that make the project go away? No. The deadline still comes. The problem is still there, maybe even bigger because you lost time. The real solution isn't just about avoiding the problem, it's about understanding it, breaking it down, and facing it. Empires learned this the hard way. A wall can keep out a physical army for a time, but it can't stop ideas from spreading. It can't fix broken trust inside the kingdom. It can't feed hungry citizens. True strength, it seems, isn't just about building higher defenses. It's about building a strong foundation, a strong community, and understanding what truly threatens you, inside and out. Sometimes, the biggest question isn't how high you build a wall, but why you need it at all. And what, exactly, are you trying to protect? And from what? Did they really need more land? It sounds like a simple question, right? Empires growing, always reaching for more territory. We often hear that empires expanded because they needed more resources, more space for people, or better defenses, and sometimes that was absolutely true. A growing population needs food, and that means more farms. Protecting your people might mean securing key mountain passes or river crossings. But here's the thing. What if the need wasn't always a true physical need for survival? What if it was something else? Sometimes need can be tricky. It can be about fear, fear of running out, fear of being weak compared to a neighbor. Or it can be about power, about feeling stronger than others, or just showing off that strength. Think about ancient Rome. They conquered lands far away, sometimes for rich farmland, but also for access to trade routes, or to stop rivals from getting too powerful. They kept expanding long after their basic needs were met. It became a way to prove their might, a kind of unstoppable momentum. Here's an example from your own life. Imagine you have a great collection of video games. Do you need every new game that comes out? Or do you want it because your friends have it, or it makes you feel like you're not missing out? Maybe you feel like if you don't get it, someone else will, and they'll be ahead of you. It's not about survival. It's about a feeling, about competition, or about status. Empires often acted like this. They kept expanding, not just to survive, but to feel secure, to show off their strength, or because they saw others growing and felt they had to keep up. So the question isn't just about dirt and borders. It's about desire. It's about what we tell ourselves we must have to be safe, to be great. And perhaps understanding this question helps us see that sometimes the biggest battles are fought not for what we lack, but for what we believe we deserve, or simply fear losing. Why did the powerful fight each other? Have you ever stopped to think about why even the most powerful groups, the ones at the top, often end up fighting each other? It seems strange, right? Like, if you're already powerful, why cause more trouble? But here's the thing. Power doesn't always lead to peace. Sometimes it creates more reasons to fight. Empires, like very strong people or big countries, often want the same things. They might want more land, more valuable resources like gold or oil, or just more influence over others. Sometimes it's about beliefs. Maybe they think their way of life is the only right way, and others are wrong for doing things differently. This isn't a new idea. For thousands of years, humans have faced this. It's a deep part of our story. How different groups with great strength clash over what they believe is theirs, or what they think they need to survive and thrive. Think about it like this. Imagine two of the best basketball teams in the world. Both are incredibly skilled, both have powerful players, and both want to win that one championship trophy. They're not fighting because they're weak or can't play the game well. No, they're fighting because they're strong, they're equally good, and they both want the same ultimate prize. Their strength doesn't make the competition less intense. It makes it incredibly high stakes and dramatic. So, fights among the powerful aren't always about weakness or fear. Often, they are about desire for control, for resources, for their ideas to be the dominant ones. This reminds us that having power doesn't magically solve all problems or make people agree. Instead, it can make the stakes much, much higher, leading to massive conflicts. And understanding this helps us see the world, and even our own everyday disagreements, a little more clearly. It shows us that conflict is a complex part of the human journey, often driven by wants, even among the mighty. Could they control such a huge empire? Have you ever tried to keep track of a really big group project at school? Or played a strategy game where your base expands, and suddenly you have too much going on? Imagine that, but with entire countries. This was a huge question for ancient empires. When an empire grew too large, like a giant tree spreading its roots too far, how did leaders make sure everything stayed connected? How did they ensure people far from the capital felt like they belonged, or that laws were followed? It wasn't just about drawing lines on a map. It was about communication. Think about news traveling at the speed of a horse, or a message taking months to arrive. If a problem flared up in a distant province, it could be weeks before the emperor heard about it. By then, it might be too late. Leaders had to trust local governors. Empires built vast road networks, sent inspectors, and even moved the capital. City still, sheer size often became its own challenge. The more you expand, the more stretched your resources become. It's a bit like trying to keep all your social media accounts perfectly updated, with friends messaging you on each one. At first, it's easy, but as more apps pop up, and more friends. Message. It gets harder to respond to everyone, to know what's happening in every group chat. You might miss important updates. Empires faced this overwhelm, but with armies, taxes, and cultures, not just chat messages. So the question wasn't always, can we conquer more land? It was deeper, can we manage more land? This speaks to a human limit. There's a natural capacity for how much one person or one system can truly oversee. Sometimes the biggest challenge isn't getting something, but simply holding on to it effectively. The fall of many great empires wasn't always about a stronger enemy, but about the quiet, internal struggle of holding on to too much. It reminds us that even grand ambitions have limits, and knowing those limits can be a different kind of strength. Did the plague take too many lives? Can a sickness ever truly change the course of human history, not just by ending lives, but by reshaping the world itself? When we look back at something like the Black Death, which swept across continents in the 1300s, it's hard to grasp the sheer scale of the loss. Imagine if 1 out of every 3 people you knew suddenly vanished, or even more. That's what happened in many places. Villages emptied, cities struggled to keep going. It was a time of immense grief and confusion. Here's the thing. Societies are like complex machines. Every person is a vital part, playing a role. When so many parts are removed so quickly, the machine doesn't just slow down, it breaks. The old ways of doing things, the rules, the social structures, they all fractured. Before the plague, there were very strict classes. Farmers were tied to their land. But when so many people died, there weren't enough workers. The few who survived had power they never had before. They could demand better pay, more freedom. This wasn't planned. It was a desperate reaction to a broken system. Think about it like this. Imagine your school building, but suddenly half the teachers and students are gone. You wouldn't just keep doing things the same way. The classes would change. New ideas for learning would have to emerge. Maybe you'd use technology differently, or students would take on more responsibility. It's a painful way to learn, but it forces creativity and new solutions. The world after the Black Death was not the same world that existed before it. New ideas about individual worth began to sprout, simply because every person who survived became incredibly valuable. So, the question isn't just about a count of the dead, it's about what happens to the living. Did that profound loss of life force humanity to question old beliefs, to find new ways to organize? Sometimes, in the deepest valleys of human suffering, the seeds of future change are unwillingly planted. And that's why this question makes us wonder if tragedy, sometimes, can unwillingly push humanity toward something entirely new. Why did loyalty disappear? Have you ever wondered why people stopped caring about something they once loved? Maybe a favorite band changes too much, or a sports team just keeps losing. That feeling of connection, of belonging, it's called loyalty. For centuries, empires relied on this deep feeling. Soldiers fought, citizens paid taxes, and everyone generally followed the rules because they believed in their leaders, or in the very idea of their homeland. They felt loyal. But here's the thing about loyalty. It's not a stone tablet. It's more like a living plant. It needs care. It needs trust. When that care stops, or that trust breaks, the plant begins to wither. Empires, like any group, needed people to feel that their leaders cared about them. When a king became greedy, or a government was unfair, or people simply couldn't feed their families while leaders lived in luxury, that loyalty started to crack. It wasn't always a dramatic shout. Often, it was a quiet sigh of disappointment. Think about a school project group. At first, everyone is excited and committed. You trust each other, and you believe in your shared goal. But what if one person starts doing all the work, while others mess around? Or what if the group leader makes all the decisions without listening to anyone else? Slowly, the people who were once eager might start to feel disconnected. They stop trying as hard. Might even stop showing up. Their loyalty to the group doesn't just disappear overnight, it erodes. It happens when trust is broken, when promises are forgotten, or when people feel unseen. So when loyalty disappeared from empires, it wasn't just a sudden decision. It was often a slow fade, a gradual pulling away. It happened because the threads of trust and shared purpose had unraveled, one by one, until there was nothing left to hold things together. And once that invisible bond is broken, it's incredibly difficult to mend. Was the trade route safe anymore? Imagine you're planning a trip, a really important one. You need to get from one town to another, carrying something valuable. Maybe it's food, medicine, or new inventions. You know the road, but lately, there have been whispers, stories of danger, bandits, or a big storm washed out the bridge. You have to ask, is the path safe? Can I still rely on it? For ancient empires, asking was the trade route safe anymore, could decide their very future. Empires, you see, weren't just about land or armies. They were huge, complex systems that needed things. Silk from China, spices from India, tin from faraway mines. These items didn't just appear, they traveled thousands of miles along specific paths, called trade routes. The Silk Road is famous, but countless others existed, over land and sea. Here's the thing, if these routes stopped being safe, everything changed. If merchants were robbed, or if wars made the paths too dangerous, goods couldn't move, money stopped flowing, people went without important resources. Think about your school lunch. What if the truck delivering food couldn't make it because the road was closed? No food. People would get hungry and angry. That's a tiny picture of what happened on a massive scale. It wasn't just about physical threats though. Sometimes, safety meant trust. Did the rulers along the route keep their promises? Were the laws fair? A road might be clear of bandits, but if a local leader suddenly charged unfair taxes or seized goods, it became unsafe in a different way. The question wasn't just, can I pass, but can I trust that I'll get there with my goods and my life intact? When people started to doubt the safety of these routes, the effects spread. Empires that relied on that flow of wealth and goods found their foundations shaking. It showed them how connected their world was, and how easily connections could break. It made people wonder if their empire, once so strong, was truly secure. And sometimes, it was that feeling of uncertainty, that loss of trust, that began to chip away at the very heart of an empire. Did anyone care about justice? When the mightiest empires rose, and then eventually fell, what did people think about fairness? Did it even matter? Justice isn't just about laws on paper. It's about a feeling, what's right, what's balanced. And if people are treated fairly, imagine a massive empire where some lived in incredible luxury, while others struggled daily just to eat. Was this seen as truly just by everyone, or only by those who benefited from it? For a long time, people wrestled with this idea. Ancient thinkers in Greece, like the philosopher Plato, talked a lot about justice. They asked if justice was a natural law, something we discover, like a rule of the universe. Or, they wondered, was it just something humans made up to help different groups live together? Even older, in places like ancient Babylon, there were detailed rule books, like the famous Code of Hammurabi. It laid out punishments, you might know, an eye for an eye, and tried to make things orderly. Empires often used these ideas of justice to keep everyone in line, but sometimes they would twist what was considered just to hold on to power. So, was it real justice then, or just control? Here's the thing, think about a group project at school. If one person does nearly all the work, but then everyone in the group gets the exact same high grade, how does that make you feel? It probably doesn't feel right. That small, uncomfortable feeling inside you, the one that whispers, that's not fair. That's directly connected to our deep human need for justice. It's like a natural desire for balance, similar to how a seesaw needs equal weight on both sides to stay level. If one side is too heavy, the whole thing crashes down. So, maybe no empire ever perfectly achieved true justice for all its people, but the very idea of it, this constant longing for things to be fair and balanced, has always been a core part of being human. It's that quiet hope that, in the end, what is right will somehow prevail, even when the world seems messy or unfair. It's a question that keeps echoing through history, long after empires have turned to dust. What happened when the mines ran dry? Imagine an empire built on the glint of gold, or the strength of iron, pulled from deep within the earth. What happens when those veins of treasure thin, or vanish entirely? This wasn't just a problem for ancient empires, it was a deep question that could shake everything. For centuries, power often came from having rich resources. Think of Rome's silver mines in Spain, or the vast timber forests that built mighty navies. As long as the flow was strong, the empire expanded, paid its soldiers, and fed its people. But here's the thing, resources are not endless. The land can become barren, the silver can run out, the best trees get cut down. When this happened, it wasn't just about money, It meant a whole way of life was challenged. Soldiers couldn't be paid, so armies weakened. Trade routes dried up. People grew hungry or couldn't find work. This led to deep unrest. Empires that once seemed unbeatable suddenly faced quiet, creeping decay from within. Think about your own energy for a day. You wake up with a certain amount, like a full battery. You use it for school, sports, thinking. If you keep pushing, using more than you have, you eventually feel completely drained. You can't focus, can't perform your best. An empire is like that. If it keeps taking, without finding new ways or new sources, its energy eventually runs out. So, the question wasn't just where is the next gold. It was how do we survive when our foundation crumbles. It forced leaders to look deeper, beyond the earth's riches, to something more lasting. Some empires adapted, finding new inventions or new lands. Others didn't, and they faded away. It shows us that true strength isn't just about what you have, but how you respond when it begins to disappear. It's a quiet reminder that even the strongest things need to change. Why were the new weapons ignored? Have you ever wondered why powerful empires, at the peak of their strength, sometimes missed obvious dangers? It's a strange thought. Imagine a new invention appears, something that could change everything, but then, it's just overlooked. Why? Here's the thing, people often prefer what they know. For centuries, armies fought with swords and spears. When gunpowder and cannons first arrived, they weren't always seen as powerful threats. Some armies even laughed. They'd spent generations perfecting sword fighting and building strong castle walls. Their whole way of life, their identity, was tied to these old methods. They had invested so much in their existing ways of war. It's like when you learn a new trick on your skateboard, but your friends keep doing the same old kickflip. Even if your new trick is faster or looks cooler, they might stick to what feels comfortable and familiar. They've practiced it a million times. It's hard to let go of what you're good at, even for something better. This isn't just about weapons. It's about how we see the world. So, when a tiny new idea challenged an empire's vast power, it wasn't always seen as a real threat. The old leaders were confident in their strength and traditions. They weren't looking for a new path because they believed their current path was perfect. This deep comfort with the familiar can sometimes blind even the most powerful. It reminds us that true strength isn't just about what you possess, but how willing you are to truly see what's coming and adapt. Sometimes, the biggest walls an empire faces are the ones it builds around its own mind. Was the next leader ready for the job? Think about a huge, powerful empire, like ancient Rome, or even a big company today. What happens when the person in charge, the one everyone looks to, is suddenly gone? This isn't just about who comes next. It's about whether that new person is actually prepared for the enormous job ahead. This question, was the next leader ready for the job, has shaken the foundations of mighty nations. For ages, when a king, queen, or emperor passed away, their oldest child often took over. Sometimes, this new ruler was smart, brave, and had learned a lot from their parents. But other times, they weren't. History is full of stories where a powerful empire began to crumble because the new leader just wasn't up to it. They lacked the experience, or the wisdom, or the sheer courage needed to guide millions of people. Think about the immense weight on their shoulders. All those lives, all that future, depending on their decisions. Here's the thing, it's like your favorite sports team. Imagine the team captain, the one who calls the plays and inspires everyone, suddenly can't play. Someone else has to step up and lead. But what if that new person hasn't been paying attention? What if they haven't learned how to manage the team under pressure, or how to make quick, smart decisions? The whole team might fall apart, right? They could lose games they should win. It's not enough to just be next in line. You have to be prepared, to have learned the ropes, to be ready for the pressure and responsibility. This deep question reminds us that true leadership isn't just a title you inherit or are given. It's a huge responsibility, a skill that takes time to build, with practice and real learning. It tells us that preparing for the future, whether for a big role someday or just for your own path in life, truly matters. It's about being ready to carry the weight, to guide, and to make good choices for everyone who depends on you. Did the common people feel safe? Did people back then, the common folk, truly feel safe? It's a simple question, but the answer is deep. When we think of safety, we often think about wars, right? Was the empire at peace? But true safety is more than just avoiding battles. It's about knowing you won't be robbed or unfairly punished for something small. It's about feeling like the powerful people above you won't just take your land or your family or force you into something terrible without warning. In ancient empires, rulers held immense power. This often brought great fear for everyday people. Sometimes, laws were clear and fair, offering some protection. But often, leaders could be cruel. They might change rules on a whim or make decisions just for themselves. So, even without war, life could feel very unsure. People might worry about new taxes or being suddenly forced into the army. Think about it like this. Imagine if your school rules changed every single day. Or if a teacher decided your grades based only on how they felt that morning. With no clear system, you wouldn't feel very secure, would you? You'd be stressed, always guessing. That constant uncertainty, the feeling your life could change for the worse because of someone else's power. That's a huge part of not feeling safe. So, this question helps us see that an empire's strength wasn't just about its armies or its wealth. It was also about how its people lived day to day. A truly strong society creates security for everyone, a peaceful rhythm where people can plan and build without constant fear. When that feeling of safety disappears, even the biggest empires start to crumble from the inside out. People can't truly thrive when they're always looking over their shoulder. It reminds us that our deepest human need, beyond food and shelter, is to feel secure, to know that tomorrow can be built upon today. Why did the laws become unfair? Have you ever noticed how some rules just don't seem right? Like they were made for someone else, not for everyone. This question cuts deep into history, showing us how power can shape the world around us. Here's the thing, laws are made by people, and people, even powerful ones, often look out for themselves. Think about ancient empires. The laws often benefited the king, the nobles, or a small group of wealthy families. They might create rules that protected their land, or made it easier for them to collect taxes, or even made it illegal for ordinary people to do certain things, like hunt in royal forests. The rules weren't built on what was fair for everyone, but on keeping a few people strong and comfortable. It's a bit like a game where the person who makes the rules also happens to be the best player, and they keep changing the rules to help themselves win. Maybe they say, only I can use this special move, or my points count double. Soon, the game isn't fun for anyone else. It's just designed for one person to always come out on top. This isn't just about ancient history though. This kind of problem can creep into any system where a few people hold most of the power and aren't truly listening to everyone else. The challenge, then, is to remember that true fairness means looking beyond our own group, beyond what benefits only us. It means trying to imagine what life is like for others, especially those with less power. Because when laws are fair, they lift everyone up, not just a select few. It's a quiet hope, a slow, steady push towards a world where rules serve all of us. Could they stop the rebellions? What happens when an empire, vast and powerful, faces its own people turning against it? Imagine a ruler on a throne, surrounded by riches, but beyond the palace, whispers of unhappiness grow into shouts of anger. This is the heart of a rebellion. It's not just a few angry people. It's when a large group decides they can no longer live under the current rules. They feel ignored, unfairly treated, or starving. And so, in their desperation for something better, they rise up. Empires had huge armies, mighty fortresses. You'd think they could just crush any uprising, right? But here's the thing. True power isn't just about swords and soldiers. It's about people's belief in their leaders. When that belief fades, when trust is broken, even the biggest army can't fix it. Think of it like a dam holding back a river. If the water pressure builds too much, tiny cracks appear. Even the strongest dam can eventually burst. In the same way, when people are pushed too far, their anger and despair build up, and eventually, that pressure will find a way to break free. History is full of these moments. Empires tried everything: harsh laws, more taxes, even small gifts to quiet the unrest. Sometimes, they used brute force, sending in troops to violently put down resistance. But even if they won that battle, the seeds of anger often remained, planted deep in the hearts of the people. And that's why it matters. The deeper question isn't just about winning a fight. It's about healing a wound that runs through society. Could these empires truly change what made people rebel in the first place? Could they address the unfairness, the hunger, the lack of a voice? Often, they couldn't or wouldn't. And that failure, That inability to truly connect with their people often proved to be the crack that brought down their mighty walls. It shows us that even the most powerful leaders must eventually face the simple truth of human needs and dignity. A kingdom, no matter how grand, cannot stand forever on fear alone. Was it smart to challenge that bigger empire? Think about it. Imagine you're facing something huge, a massive wall, a giant, a storm that fills the sky. When a small group, a city, or a young nation looked at a giant empire, one with endless armies, vast wealth, and a history of crushing opponents, was it ever smart to say, "No, we won't obey"? Here's the thing. On paper, it almost never looked smart. Empires held immense power, vast resources, seasoned experience, and fear as a weapon. They could roll over smaller opponents like a heavy stone. So, what made people decide to stand up? Sometimes, it was pure desperation. They had nothing left to lose. Their very way of life felt threatened. Other times, a spark of hope, a belief that injustice couldn't last. Or maybe, a leader made a huge miscalculation, overestimating their own strength. Think about a small soccer team. They've trained hard, but they're about to play against a team that's won every game for years. Its players seem faster, stronger, and just plain better. Is it smart to think they can win? Not by the numbers. But what if they have a secret strategy? What if they play with a heart the bigger team doesn't expect? What if, win or lose, just stepping onto that field and giving it everything changes something within them? It shows they won't back down. Challenging a bigger empire was rarely a smart tactical move. It was often a gamble, a desperate plea, or a defiant roar. But sometimes, the question wasn't just about smartness. It was about freedom. It was about identity. It was about whether a life lived under a giant's heel was truly living at all. And that choice, whether it led to victory or defeat, echoed through history. It reminds us that courage isn't always about winning, but about choosing to stand. Did the rulers keep their promises? Think about a time someone important made you a promise. Maybe a parent said they'd take you somewhere, or a teacher said they'd extend a deadline. What happens inside you when that promise is kept? And what about when it isn't? Here's the thing. Leaders throughout history, from ancient kings to modern governments, have always made promises to the people they rule. These aren't always spoken out loud. Sometimes, the promise is simply understood. It's the idea that a ruler will protect their people, keep them safe, make fair laws, or ensure there's enough food. In return, the people give their loyalty, pay taxes, or follow the rules. It's like an unspoken agreement, a basic trust. But what happens when that trust breaks? When the ruler promises protection but fails to defend against invaders, or promises fairness, but then taxes become crushing and unfair. History shows us again and again that broken promises are like slow poison for an empire. They eat away at the faith people have in their leaders. Imagine you're working on a big group project for school. Everyone agrees to do their part, right? Your friend promises they'll finish their section by Friday, because you're counting on it for your part. But Friday comes, and they haven't done it. Now you're stuck. The project is late, and you feel let down. You might not trust that friend as much for the next project. Now, imagine that feeling, but multiplied by millions of people. Over years, decades, or even centuries, all feeling let down by their leaders. When a ruler's promises crumble, the people's belief in the system crumbles too. And without that shared belief, without trust, the very foundations of even the strongest empires can start to crack. It reminds us that promises, big or small, are not just words. They are the invisible threads that connect people and power. When those threads snap, the consequences can echo through history, quietly signaling the beginning of an end. Why did the workers get so angry? Have you ever felt a deep, burning unfairness? Maybe someone else got all the credit for your hard work, or you saw someone being treated badly, and it just made your blood boil. That feeling, that sharp, hot anger, is powerful, and it's what often made workers, from ancient empires to now, finally say, enough. Here's the thing, it wasn't just about not having enough food, though hunger was a huge part. Imagine working from sunup to sundown, day after day. You build palaces, farm fields that feed the city, but you live in a tiny shack, barely fed, with no say. Your life feels like it belongs to someone else. Think about it like this. Imagine your favorite video game. You spend hours leveling up, collecting rare items. Then, someone else logs in, plays 5 minutes, and gets all your achievements and loot without effort. How would that make you feel? Pretty furious, right? Because your effort wasn't valued. Your time, skill, dedication, they were ignored. Workers gave their lives, their sweat, their strength, built grand things for others. When masters lived in luxury, taking everything, and giving nothing but harsh demands, that anger grew. It wasn't just physical pain, it was the pain of being unseen, unheard, and unvalued. This deep anger often comes from a basic human need for dignity. We all want to be seen as worthwhile, as people who matter. When dignity is stripped away, when people are treated like tools instead of humans, the anger builds. It's a silent cry for justice, a hope for respect and recognition. Sometimes that silent cry becomes a thunderous roar that shakes the foundations of even the biggest empires. Could the empire still adapt to change? Could an old tree still bend when a strong wind blows a new way? Or would it simply snap? This is a deep question for empires, too. When the world shifts around them, could these vast, powerful systems actually change? Or were they to set in their ways, too heavy with old traditions to move and flex with new demands? Think about it like this. An empire is not just land and armies. It's also a deeply rooted way of thinking, a set of ancient rules and beliefs that hold everything together. For centuries, these might have worked perfectly. They helped the empire grow, stay safe, and control its people. But then, sometimes, things shift dramatically. New ideas about how people should be governed appear. New technologies change how wars are fought or how goods are made. Maybe even new enemies rise up, with completely different ways of living. Here's the thing. True adaptation means letting go of what you know, even if it worked for a long time. It means seeing new problems clearly and finding completely new answers. It's like a student who's always studied for tests by memorizing facts. But then the teacher introduces a new project that asks for creative problem solving instead. If that student can adjust their approach, learn new skills, and think differently, they will succeed. But if they keep trying the old method, hoping it still works, they will struggle. An empire, though much bigger and more complex, faces a similar challenge. Sometimes, powerful leaders clung to the old ways because they always worked, or because changing things felt like admitting they were wrong. They feared upsetting the balance. But that stubbornness, that quiet refusal to see things differently, often led to a slow, internal decay. The world kept moving, evolving, but the empire stood still, like a giant ship stuck firmly in dry dock while the ocean waves crashed. Further away, it's a quiet, profound sadness, really the inability to grow and transform, leading to the inevitable end. The simple, unchanging fact is, everything changes, always. And the hardest question is always, are we willing to change with it, or will we be left behind by the relentless tide of time? Did they borrow too much money? Have you ever wondered if the great empires of the past had a problem with their wallets? Like, did they ever just run out of cash? It's not a silly question. Here's the thing. Even the biggest, strongest empires faced money troubles, just like you might borrow $5 from a friend for lunch. Big countries borrowed money too. They needed it for huge things, building amazing cities, feeding their people, or fighting long, expensive wars. But here's the problem. When you borrow money, you usually have to pay it back with extra, called interest. For empires, this could get really big, really fast. Imagine you get an allowance, say $20 a week. Now, imagine you borrow $100 from a friend for a new video game, promising to pay back a little extra each week. Soon, a big chunk of your allowance is just going to paying back that friend. You might not have enough left for new clothes or going out. That's kind of how it worked for empires. They'd borrow from rich citizens, or even other countries, to pay for things they couldn't afford. Rome, for example, spent massive amounts on its armies and grand projects, often borrowing heavily to do so. France, before its revolution, piled up huge debts from wars that cost more than they could earn. When a country owes too much, it struggles to pay its soldiers, fix its roads, or even buy food for its people. The money just isn't there, because it's all tied up in debts. It's not just about numbers on a page, it's about trust. When an empire couldn't pay its debts, people lost faith. The economy would shake, leading to unrest. So, this question isn't just about how much money they had. It's about the burden they carried, the promises they couldn't keep, It reminds us that even for the most powerful, there's a limit to how much you can take without giving back, and that every choice about what we owe affects everyone. It's about balance, always. Why did the citizens feel like outsiders? Have you ever been somewhere, maybe a new club or a big family gathering, and felt like you didn't quite belong? Like you were there, but not really part of it? That feeling, for many people in history, became a deep crack in the foundations of great empires. Here's the thing. People need to feel connected. They need to feel like their voice matters, that their struggles are seen, and that they share something important with others in their society. When an empire grew too big, or its leaders became too focused on power far away, the everyday person could start to feel invisible. Laws might change without their input, taxes might feel unfair, and their unique way of life, their traditions, might not be respected. It was like living in a huge house, but feeling trapped in a small, forgotten room, not connected to the life happening in the rest of the building. Think about a school group project. If you're in a team, but your ideas are always ignored, or you're never asked for your opinion, you might start to feel like you're not really part of that team. You're doing the work, sure, but your heart isn't in it, because you don't feel valued. This isn't just about being lonely. It's about a deep disconnect from the very system that's supposed to support you. When many people start feeling that way, ignored, undervalued, or simply forgotten by those in charge, their loyalty begins to fade. They stop caring about the grand vision of the empire because it doesn't seem to include them. It makes the whole society fragile. So, the question isn't just about why they felt like outsiders, but what happens when a community loses its shared sense of belonging. It shows us how vital it is for everyone, no matter how small their role seems, to feel truly included and seen. This connection is the real glue of any group, any nation, any empire. Was the education system failing? Think about it. When an empire starts to crumble, is it just about armies and money, or is something deeper going on? Something about how people think and learn. Here's the thing. For an empire to keep going, its people need to keep learning, adapting, and finding new answers. If the education system stops working well, it's like the empire's brain isn't growing anymore. Long ago, in many powerful empires, education was often for a select few. Maybe it was just for nobles, or for priests, or for military leaders. And often, what they learned was about preserving old traditions, not about questioning them or inventing new things. Imagine a group of people who are only taught to do things exactly as they were done before. They might be really good at those old ways, but what happens when the world changes? What if new challenges appear that require totally new ideas? It's a bit like a chef who only learns how to cook one dish. They can make that dish perfectly every time. But if their customers suddenly want something different, or if the ingredients for that one dish disappear, the chef is in trouble. They haven't learned how to experiment, how to create something new from scratch. They haven't learned to adapt. An empire's education system can fail if it doesn't teach people to think critically, to ask tough questions, and to innovate. It's not just about memorizing facts. It's about learning, how to solve problems no one has ever seen before. When the minds of a society become rigid, unwilling to explore new ideas, or unable to see beyond what always was, that society can start to weaken. It loses its ability to respond to change, to solve new problems. A healthy empire needs fresh thinking, new solutions, and people brave enough to imagine a different future. And that kind of thinking comes from a strong, open education. It's a quiet kind of power, but it's real. Did they rely too much on one thing? Have you ever thought about what makes something truly strong, something that lasts? Sometimes, we assume that being incredibly good at just one thing is the ultimate way to succeed. But here's a deeper question. What if that one thing is your only real support? This is a profound question empires faced, too. Imagine a huge, powerful empire. It might be amazing at trading spices, or maybe it had the strongest army, or perhaps it built its whole power on digging up a lot of gold. For a long time, these things made them rich and feared. They put all their trust, even their future, in that one big strength. But here's the thing. What happens if spice routes change? What if a new, clever military strategy makes their old army look slow? What if gold mines run completely dry, or new, richer sources are found elsewhere? When an empire built its existence on one pillar, and that pillar cracks, the whole thing can collapse. Think about a chair. If a chair has 4 legs, and one breaks. It's wobbly, but it might still stand. You can fix it. But imagine a chair with only one giant leg right in the middle. If that one leg breaks, the whole chair crashes to the floor. It has no backup, no other true support. It's like that with people too. If you only ever learn one skill, say, playing a specific video game really well, what happens when that game isn't popular anymore? Or when you can't play it? Being adaptable, having different skills, and being open to learning new things, that makes you much stronger and more resilient. It gives you many options and different ways to handle life's challenges. Empires, like people, sometimes forgot this lesson. They got comfortable. They didn't look for new ways to grow or different kinds of strengths to build. They just kept leaning on what worked before. And when the world changed around them, they simply couldn't change with it. It reminds us that real, lasting strength often comes from being flexible, from having many different ways to stand tall and adapt, not just one fixed way. Why did the generals become politicians? Have you ever thought about who gets to lead? Not just in games or clubs, but in big societies, in empires. Here's the thing, often, the people who are best at fighting wars end up becoming the ones who run the whole country. Generals, who command armies and win battles, sometimes step right into the role of a king or an emperor. This happened a lot throughout history. Think about it. When an empire is facing danger, who do people look to? They look to the strong leader, the one who can protect them. A general has proven they can make tough decisions, organize large groups of people, and keep things stable even when everything feels like it's falling apart. They gain huge respect and loyalty from soldiers and citizens alike, because they are seen as saviors. So, here's what happened. After a big war, or even during one, the general might be the only person with enough power and influence to keep order. They already have an army that listens to them. People might trust them more than any old politician who just talks. It's a bit like if your school's emergency response leader, the one who knows exactly what to do when something goes wrong, suddenly became the student body president. Everyone saw them act responsibly and effectively during a crisis. So they think, this person knows how to handle things. This shift, from warrior to ruler, tells us something important about power. It often comes from a place of great need, from a desire for safety and order. But here's the problem. The skills needed to win a war are not always the same skills needed to build a peaceful society. Leading soldiers is different from leading a nation of many different people. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What kind of leader does a society truly need when the fighting stops? And can one person really be both? It's a question about trust, survival, and the heavy path of leadership. Could they defend every border? Think about a giant map, stretched wide across a whole continent. Imagine an empire trying to hold on to every single line on that map, every inch of its edge. Is that even possible? This question digs deep into a common problem for any powerful group. How do you protect everything you claim? Empires, by their nature, get very big. The bigger they are, the longer their borders become. And a border isn't just a line on paper, it's a real place. It's mountains, rivers, deserts, or just open land. Defending these lines means sending out soldiers, building forts, and constantly watching. But here's the thing. Human attention and resources are not endless. You can't be everywhere at once, fully ready for anything. Take the ancient Roman Empire, for example. Its borders stretched for thousands of miles, from cold Britain to the hot deserts of North Africa. They had mighty armies, but even the Romans learned that constantly guarding such a huge area was incredibly draining. Threats came from outside, yes, but also from groups inside trying to break away. The further you get from the center of power, the harder it is to keep things stable. It's a bit like a student trying to focus on every single thing at school at the exact same time. Your homework for English, that big history project, the science test next week, and also your friends, and what's happening at home. You can't give 100% to everything, all the time. Some things will naturally get less attention, or feel less protected, because your energy and time have limits. So, the question isn't just about soldiers and walls, it's about the very nature of limits. Every empire, no matter how strong, had to face its boundaries. It had to decide what was most important to protect, and what might have to be let go. This struggle reminds us that even the greatest power has an edge. It's a quiet reminder that true strength might not be about holding on to everything, but knowing what truly matters, and guarding that with everything you have. Did the stories of the past still matter? Sometimes, it can feel like history is just a dusty old book. All those events, all those people, long gone. So, does it really matter to us now, sitting here today? It's a good question to ask. And the answer is deep, like the roots of an ancient tree. The past isn't truly gone. It's still alive in the world around us, shaping everything from the buildings we walk into, to the ideas we hold, even the questions we ask ourselves. Think of it like this. Imagine you're trying to build something totally new, maybe a robot or a complicated computer program. Would you start completely from scratch, without looking at anything anyone else has ever done? Probably not. You'd study what worked before, what failed, what designs were strong. You'd learn from the history of robotics or programming. That's how we build our future, too. For centuries, people have looked back, not just out of curiosity, but out of necessity. They needed to understand why things were the way they were. They wanted to learn from triumphs and tragedies. Many empires that rose and fell didn't vanish without a trace. They left behind lessons, warnings, and sometimes even forgotten wisdom. The way we organize our towns, the laws that keep us safe, even the way we tell stories, so much of it comes from paths trod long ago. Here's the thing, those old stories, the triumphs and the mistakes, they offer us a kind of memory. Not a memory of what we did, but what humanity did. They don't tell us what to think, but they can show us how to think about the big problems we still face today, like dealing with change, or understanding conflict, or building a fair society. It's like having access to a vast, quiet library of experiences waiting for us to simply open the pages. So, yes, the past absolutely matters. It's the very ground beneath our feet, holding us steady and helping us stand firm as we bravely look towards tomorrow. Why was the food supply unstable? Have you ever really thought about how truly vital food is? Not just for your energy, but for the very existence of a whole society. For ancient empires, food wasn't just important, it was the bedrock, the solid ground everything else was built upon. If people couldn't eat, nothing else truly mattered. And here's the thing, their food supply was incredibly fragile. Most people in these empires were farmers. They worked the land, growing crops like wheat or rice, and raising animals. But imagine if all your community's food for a year depended solely on good weather. What if the rains didn't arrive, causing drought? Or what if too much rain caused floods, washing away harvests? Then there were threats like swarms of insects devouring fields, or diseases wiping out animals. These weren't small problems. One bad growing season could mean starvation for thousands, even millions, of people. When stomachs are empty, peace usually doesn't last long. People become desperate. They might blame their leaders, or they would fight each other for what little food was left. A simple, yet devastating, question like, why aren't we eating, could spark widespread unrest, leading to rebellions that shattered kingdoms. Think about it like this. Your smartphone needs power to work, right? It needs its battery charged. If that power source disappears, your phone, no matter how advanced, becomes a useless piece of plastic. It can't do anything. Empires operated much the same way. Food was their essential power source. Without a steady flow of it, even the strongest army or the wisest ruler couldn't maintain order or keep society functioning. So, the instability of food wasn't just about hunger. It ran deeper. It was about a constant gnawing fear. It was about the crushing uncertainty of knowing that, at any moment, the very foundation of your life and your society could just crumble away. It makes you pause and consider how many complex systems work together, often unnoticed, just to ensure we have a meal on our table today. And it reminds us of the delicate, invisible threads that truly hold our modern world together. Was the government too slow to act? Have you ever had a small problem you knew you should deal with, but you put it off? Maybe a messy room, or a school project that seemed far away. And then, suddenly, that small problem became a huge, overwhelming mess. Well, imagine that feeling. But instead of your room, it's an entire kingdom or empire. This is a deep question historians often ask when looking at why great civilizations crumble. Did the people in charge simply wait too long? Here's the thing about many big problems. They usually start small. They begin as whispers of unease, a tiny crack in the system, or a slow shift in how things work. For leaders, seeing these early signs and acting quickly is incredibly important. But sometimes, those in power are focused on other issues. or they don't see how serious the danger truly is. Sometimes, they even hope the problem will just disappear. This isn't just an old story from ancient Rome. It's a human challenge, one that leadership faces always. Think about a small leak in a water pipe hidden inside your house walls. At first, it's just a tiny drip, drip, drip. You might not even notice it. But if you ignore that tiny drip, day after day, what happens? Water collects, wood rots, mold grows. Eventually, you have a huge, messy, expensive problem. All that damage started with something simple that could have been fixed easily. Governments face choices just like this, but on a much larger scale, where the house is a whole society and its walls are the lives of its people. History quietly asks this question. Again and again, were leaders too stuck in old ways to truly see new problems forming? Were they too slow to change, too slow to listen to what people needed, or to react to dangers growing on their borders? Sometimes, an empire doesn't fall from a grand battle or a sudden invasion. It's about the quiet, slow passage of time, and the hard choices never made. It's about actions never taken. The quiet echo of inaction, the silence of waiting, can sometimes be more powerful and more destructive than any loud cry of war. Did the empire forget its purpose? What happens when something huge, something powerful, stops remembering why it started? Every empire, every nation, begins with a clear idea. Maybe it's to protect its people, or to create a place where everyone can thrive. That core idea, that driving reason, is its purpose. It's like the engine that keeps everything moving. But here's the thing, as empires grow, as they become rich and powerful, that original purpose can start to fade. They might get caught up in simply gaining more land or more gold. The focus shifts from why they exist to just how much they have. The Roman Empire, for example, once built on civic duty, later saw leaders more focused on personal luxury than serving the state. The deeper meaning got lost. Imagine a really good band. They start playing music because they love it, wanting to make songs that connect with people. That's their purpose. But then, they get famous and make a lot of money. Soon, they might just focus on selling albums, on tours. They might even play songs they don't really like, just because they think people will buy them. The music becomes less about passion and more about profit. The band members might not even remember why they started playing. The energy goes, and eventually, the band breaks up. It's a quiet question, isn't it? Not about a battle, but a slow forgetting. When an empire forgets its true purpose, it becomes a shell. It might still look strong, but inside, the spirit has dimmed. It's a powerful reminder that for anything to last, whether it's a civilization or a personal goal, need to keep remembering why we're doing it. Purpose is the heartbeat. Without it, even the strongest things can just drift away. Why did the powerful ignore the poor? Have you ever wondered why, throughout history, those with great power often seemed to ignore the struggles of those with very little? It's a deep question, and it doesn't have one simple answer. It's not always about being cruel. Often, it's about living in entirely different worlds. Imagine ancient Rome. Emperors and senators lived in huge, beautiful villas, with gardens and servants. They ate fine food and wore rich clothes. But just a few miles away, most people lived in cramped, dirty apartments, struggling daily for food and shelter. The powerful lived in a different physical space. This distance made it easy to lose touch, to forget what life was like for others. They might start to believe their own comfortable lives were normal, or that the poor were simply lazy, or that poverty was just how things were. It's a sad thought, but it happened often. Think of it like this. When you're really focused on a difficult video game, trying to beat a level, you might not even notice if your phone is buzzing, or if someone calls your name. Your brain zooms in on one thing, ignoring everything else. For people in power, their game can be about keeping wealth, increasing influence, or maintaining status. They get so caught up that daily hardships of others can simply fall outside their view. It's not always a mean choice. Sometimes it's just a different kind of focus, a different set of priorities taking over. This historical pattern reminds us how hard it can be to truly see and understand lives very different from our own. It shows that empathy, feeling what others feel, isn't always easy, especially when our experiences are so far apart. But it's also a quiet challenge for all of us to look beyond our own comfortable lives, to understand the stories of people who live in very different ways. Because seeing and understanding others, even when it's hard, is often the first step toward making things better for everyone. Could they survive a new disease? Imagine a silent enemy, unseen and unknown, sweeping through a mighty empire. This wasn't an army with swords, but something invisible, something that made people cough and burn with fever, then simply disappear. Could an empire, strong and proud, truly survive that kind of enemy? Here's the thing. Throughout history, this question wasn't just a scary story. It was real. Think about the Roman Empire, so powerful, with its vast roads and legions. But when new illnesses like smallpox or measles came along, they hit hard. People had no immunity, no way to fight back, because their bodies had never seen these germs before. Whole cities could be weakened. Farms wouldn't get tended. Armies couldn't fight or consider the ancient civilizations in the Americas, like the Aztecs. When Europeans arrived, they brought diseases that were common in Europe, but completely new to the Americas. For the Aztec people, these illnesses were devastating. Their bodies simply weren't prepared. It broke down their societies in ways no army ever could. An empire is kind of like a huge body. When a disease strikes, it's not just about losing people. It's about fear spreading fast. It's about trade routes shutting down, leaders getting sick, trust starting to crack among everyone. It's about a community suddenly facing a problem no one knows how to solve. Think about your own body. If a sickness you've never had before shows up, your immune system has to figure out how to fight it. It's like a brand new, very difficult puzzle. Your body has to learn the solution, fast. For an empire, it's the same, but on a massive scale. Can its leaders find solutions? Can its people adapt? Can their knowledge protect them from something completely foreign? This question asks if a society is truly ready for the unknown. It reminds us that sometimes the biggest threats are the ones we can't see coming. It also makes you think about how we, today, might face something totally new, because even the strongest walls and the biggest armies can't stop a tiny germ. And that's why it matters. Understanding what made empires vulnerable helps us understand our own world, and what makes us strong. Was the next generation prepared? When big empires made their biggest choices, they often thought about the here and now. They dealt with wars, built cities, and set up rules. But here's a deeper question. Were the people who came next, their children and grandchildren, truly ready for what followed? It's not just about what leaders decided, but how those decisions shaped the future for everyone else. Did the groundwork laid really prepare the next generation to handle the long-term consequences, both good and bad? Think about any big society. Leaders work hard, they achieve great things, or they make big mistakes. But what happens when the next wave of people steps up? Did the older generation teach them how to think for themselves when completely new problems arose? Or did they just teach them how to follow the old ways? This isn't just about passing down rules or jobs. It's about passing down a way of seeing the world, a sense of how to solve new problems, not just repeating old solutions. It's about foresight, looking far ahead, and preparing minds, not just resources. Here's an example that might help. Imagine you spend years learning to play a very specific type of video game. You master all its rules, all its tricks, every secret path. You become incredibly good at that game. But then, a new game comes out, one with totally different rules, new challenges, and a whole new world. Did your intense practice on the old game prepare you to instantly understand and master the new one? Probably not completely. You learned specific answers, not the skill of figuring out totally new problems from scratch. This question makes us think about legacy. It's not just about what we build, but what we teach others to build after we are gone. It's about passing on the tools for adaptation and growth. It's a quiet thought, maybe, but a powerful one. Are we truly preparing the minds of tomorrow for the world that will be theirs, or just for the world we know today? Will they have the deep wisdom needed to navigate storms we cannot even imagine? Did they push their luck too far? Have you ever felt like you were on a roll? Maybe in a game, or with your grades, everything just clicked. But then, you kept going, maybe ignored a warning sign, and suddenly it all fell apart. This feeling, this moment of pushing too far, is a question empires often faced. Did they know when to stop? When was enough truly enough? Think about it. A powerful empire expands, conquers, builds. It feels invincible. They might win battle after battle, gather more wealth, control more land. This success can make leaders, and their people feel like there are no limits. They start believing their own strength is absolute, that rules don't apply to them, or that their good fortune will never run out. This is where the danger comes in. History is full of stories like this, not just big empires, but smaller groups, or even people in their own lives. It's like playing a game of Jenga. You carefully pull out blocks, the tower gets taller, more wobbly. You keep pulling, thinking, just one more. But then, one block too many, and the whole thing crashes down. That last block wasn't special, but it was the one that broke the balance. 4. Empires. That last block could be invading a distant land they couldn't control, or spending too much money on grand projects, or ignoring the needs of their own people. It could be underestimating a smaller enemy, or refusing to adapt to new ideas. The question wasn't always, can we do this? But should we? Did they miss the signs that their tower was about to fall? Here's the thing, true wisdom often lies in knowing your limits, in understanding when to pull back, even when you feel strongest. It's about humility, and the quiet understanding that nothing lasts forever without thought. Why did the old alliances break? Have you ever wondered why even the strongest friendships sometimes drift apart? Or why a group that once worked perfectly together suddenly falls into disagreement? It's a bit like that with nations and empires. Alliances are like promises or agreements between different groups, made for a specific reason. Maybe they shared a common enemy, or they wanted to trade with each other, or they believed in the same big idea. For a while, these bonds can feel unbreakable, like a mighty dam holding back a flood. But here's the thing, the world keeps moving, and as time passes, the reasons for that alliance can start to change. The common enemy might disappear, or a new threat might appear that wasn't there before. Maybe one group grows stronger, and its needs shift, while another struggles. Their old shared interests might simply fade away, replaced by new ones that actually put them at odds. So, the promise that once held them together becomes strained, like an old rubber band stretched too far. Think about a big group project in school. At first, you all agree on the topic and how to divide the work. Everyone has a clear role, and you're all pushing towards the same grade. But then, maybe one person decides they care more about a different class, or someone else gets a new idea that conflicts with the original plan. Suddenly, the harmony is gone. The shared goal isn't so shared anymore, and the group starts to pull in different directions. That doesn't mean anyone is bad. It just means circumstances changed. It's often not about betrayal or anger, but about the slow, quiet shift of reality. Empires, like people, are always adapting to new challenges. And sometimes, to adapt and survive, they have to let go of old ties that no longer serve their purpose. It's a deep kind of sadness, perhaps, when something that once seemed so strong simply unravels because the world itself moved on. Could they still inspire their people? What makes someone truly inspiring? Think about it for a moment. Someone who can move crowds, make people believe in a shared future, or even risk everything for an idea. Many emperors, kings, and leaders throughout history held immense power, and a big part of that power was their ability to inspire. Sometimes, they inspired loyalty through grand victories. Other times, it was through strict rules and fear. But here's the thing, times change. An empire might last for hundreds of years, but the world around it keeps moving. The questions that made people doubt a leader in one century might be completely different in the next. What if a leader's power came from ancient traditions, from stories about being chosen by gods? And what if, over time, people stopped believing those stories so easily? The old ways of inspiring, the old answers, might simply not connect anymore. Imagine a really popular band from your grandparents' time. Maybe they had amazing songs, and everyone loved them. But if that same band, without changing anything, tried to play for today's music fans, would they still have the same power to inspire? What if their sound was out of date? What if the message in their songs didn't speak to current challenges? It's not that their old music was bad, but the world moved on. People need something new, something that feels real and true to their lives right now. The same idea goes for empires. A leader in the past might have been seen as a god on earth. Today, we expect leaders to earn our trust, to listen, and to work with us. The questions that once brought an empire down often asked, do our leaders truly understand us? Do they still share our hopes? True inspiration isn't a fixed thing, stuck in time. It grows, it adapts, and it finds new ways to connect with people's hearts and minds, and that's a deep kind of power, one that truly lasts. Did the rulers care about their people's health? When we think of great empires, we often picture grand armies, vast treasures, or magnificent buildings. But did the powerful people at the top truly think about the everyday health of their citizens? This isn't just about doctors or medicine, because that kind of care was very different long ago. It's about more basic things: access to clean water, enough food for everyone, and safe places to live. When a lot of people get sick or don't have enough to eat, an empire can become weak from the inside. So, it's a big question. Was public health a priority or an afterthought? Some empires did try to care for their people. The ancient Romans, for example, built amazing aqueducts to bring fresh, clean water into their cities. They also had public baths where people could wash. They understood that healthy citizens could work, farm, fight in their armies, and help the empire grow strong. They knew that a sick population meant fewer workers, fewer soldiers, and more unrest. But many rulers didn't care much at all. For them, power and conquest were everything. They might only think about health if a terrible disease threatened their own palace or their troops. A sick, suffering population could eventually rise up, or simply be too weak to keep the empire running. Think about your own school. There's usually a nurse, and the restrooms are kept clean, and the cafeteria tries to serve good food. Why? Because if students are healthy, they can learn better, they can focus, they miss fewer days, and the school runs smoothly. A school that completely ignored its students' health would likely see lower grades, more problems, and a lot of unhappy people. An empire worked in a similar way, just on a much, much bigger scale, with millions of lives at stake. So, the question of caring for people's health isn't just about ancient medicine or grand projects. It's about how much a ruler truly valued the lives they governed. Did they see their people as just tools, meant to serve the empire's goals? Or did they see them as valuable members of a living, breathing society, deserving of basic well-being? The answer often shaped whether their empire stood strong for centuries or slowly crumbled from within, weakened by suffering and neglect, rather than outside enemies. Why did the best fighters leave the army? Have you ever wondered why a truly great team, full of amazing players, might suddenly start to struggle, or even fall apart? It's not always because the other team got better. Sometimes, the strongest members, the ones everyone relied on, quietly walk away. This isn't just a modern problem. Empires, for thousands of years, faced this same deep question about their best fighters. Think about it. These weren't just brave people. They were the most skilled, most loyal, the ones who had won countless battles. Why would they choose to leave the very force they helped build? It wasn't always about fear, or even losing a fight. Often, it was about something much deeper, something that chipped away at their spirit and trust. Imagine a star athlete on a school sports team. This player is amazing, always scores points, always helps the team win. But then, one day, they just stop showing up. People might think they got injured, or found a better team. But what if it was something else? What if their efforts weren't appreciated? Or the coaches didn't listen? Or the team wasn't playing by the rules anymore? The talent was still there, but the heart for it was gone. It's similar for the best fighters in an army. Maybe their leaders stopped caring for them, or didn't pay them fairly. Maybe the cause they fought for changed, and they no longer believed in it. Or perhaps they saw too much corruption, too many lies, and felt their sacrifices meant nothing. The empire might seem strong on the outside, but inside, its soul was cracking. When those who hold an empire together feel their worth is forgotten, or their purpose lost, they will look for peace elsewhere. So, the question isn't just about power, but about the deeper bonds of trust and purpose that hold people and empires together. When those bonds break, even the strongest will let go. Was the system too complex to fix? Have you ever tried to untangle a ball of yarn or a whole mess of headphones where every single strand is knotted up with another? You pull on one piece, and it just makes another knot tighter somewhere else. It feels impossible, right? Well, imagine that, but on the scale of an entire empire. Sometimes, the systems that hold a big civilization together, its rules, its money, its leaders, its ideas can become so incredibly complex that no one person, or even a whole group of people, can truly understand how all the pieces fit together anymore. Here's the thing: empires grow over hundreds of years. They add new territories, new laws, new ways of doing things. They might have started simple, but then they became like a giant machine with too many moving parts. Think about the Roman Empire. It was massive. It covered so much land, with so many different cultures and languages, keeping it all connected, making sure everyone followed the same rules. Collecting taxes fairly, it was a huge, complicated job, and over time, old problems would stack up with new ones. Maybe the roads were breaking down, or the army was spread too thin, or corruption was rampant in faraway provinces. So when things started to go wrong, it wasn't just one problem you could point to and fix. It was a web, like that tangled ball of yarn. You pull on the tax issue, but it's connected to how the rich landowners behave, which is connected to how the army is paid, which is connected to how many new enemies they have. Every fix could accidentally cause 3 new problems somewhere else. It wasn't about people not being smart enough. It was about the sheer scale of the puzzle. It makes you wonder, can something become so big, so interwoven, that it simply can't be steered anymore? That may be, even with the best intentions, the system itself becomes too heavy, too intricate, to ever be truly repaired from within. And so, it doesn't just crash. It slowly, quietly, unravels. Did they understand their enemies? Think about this. When groups or countries were about to clash, how much did they truly know about the other side? It wasn't just about armies or weapons. It was deeper. It was about understanding their fears, their hopes, their ways of thinking, their culture. Did they value honor? Were they desperate for resources? The empires that lasted longest often had leaders who knew these things. They knew what made their potential enemies tick, what drove their actions. History shows how vital this was. Great generals didn't just study maps. They studied minds. They tried to see the world through the eyes of the people they faced. This helped them guess moves, predict reactions, and sometimes even avoid conflict. Here's the thing, understanding doesn't always lead to fighting. Sometimes, seeing another's perspective can lead to peace, or a smarter way to handle things without destruction. Imagine you're on a school sports team, playing your biggest rivals. You don't just practice your own plays. You watch videos of their games. You learn how their star player moves, what plays their coach likes. You try to get inside their heads. You want to know their strengths so you can plan, and their weaknesses, so you can use them. It's not about being mean. It's about being prepared and smart. Empires, like those teams, needed this deep insight. When they failed to truly understand their opponents, their culture, beliefs, motives, that's when mistakes were made. Those mistakes could lead to huge problems, defeats, and even their empire's downfall. This shows that true strength isn't just about power or wealth. It's about knowing. It's about looking closely at the world and at people, even those who seem very different from you. And that's why this question matters. Why did the prices go through the roof? Have you ever thought about what happens when money, something we rely on every day, suddenly isn't worth much at all? Imagine a world where a simple loaf of bread costs millions, or even billions of dollars. It sounds like something out of a science fiction movie, but it has happened many times throughout history, causing immense suffering and even contributing to the fall of great empires. Here's the thing. Money isn't just paper or metal coins. It's a shared idea, a kind of promise that we all agree on its value. When that promise breaks, when people lose faith in their money, things go wrong fast. This usually happens when a government prints too much money, or when there aren't enough goods and services for everyone to buy. It's like having a school cafeteria where the principal suddenly gives everyone $1 million to spend, but there are only 10 pizzas. What happens? The price of one slice of pizza would instantly become incredibly high. It's simple supply and demand, but on a massive, scary scale. Think about the ancient Roman Empire. At one point, their silver coins were made with less and less silver. People noticed. They realized the coins weren't worth as much as they used to be, so they asked for more coins for the same goods. Prices climbed higher and higher. Centuries later, in Germany after World War I, something similar, but far worse, happened. The government printed so much money that people needed wheelbarrows full of cash just to buy groceries. This isn't just about things being expensive. It's about the very foundation of daily life crumbling. So, here's what I found. When prices go through the roof, it's often a sign that trust has broken down. Trust in the government, trust in the economy, trust in each other. It shows us how deeply connected our lives are to these big, invisible ideas, like value and trust. When those connections fray, the consequences can be truly vast, affecting every single person and shaking the very ground that societies stand on. It's a quiet collapse, not with an army, but with the erosion of a simple shared belief. Could they control their own officials? Imagine you're in charge of a huge team. You give clear instructions, right? But what happens when some of your team members, far away, start doing things their own way? This was a massive problem for ancient empires. Here's the thing, an empire is built on rules, laws, and the people who make sure those rules are followed. These are the officials, governors, tax collectors, generals. They represent the emperor, or the government, in distant lands. But as empires grew, they stretched out like a giant thin spider web. The central power, usually the emperor, couldn't be everywhere at once, so they relied on these officials. The big question became, would these officials stay loyal, or would they use their power for themselves, taking bribes, raising their own armies, or even challenging the emperor? This struggle over control was constant. A local governor might slowly build up personal power, acting more like a king than a servant of the empire. And that's why it matters. If these officials were corrupt or disloyal, the empire's laws wouldn't be followed correctly, taxes wouldn't be collected fairly, and the people might lose faith in their rulers. Such disloyalty could create instability, making the empire vulnerable. From within. Think about a big school project. Your group leader gives everyone a task. But what if someone in your group decides to do their part completely differently? Or maybe they just don't do it at all. And because the leader can't watch everyone all the time, this small issue can grow. On a much larger scale, with entire regions and vital resources at stake, this lack of control could weaken an empire from the inside, like a slow-moving sickness. So, the question, could they control their own officials, wasn't just about good management, it was about trust, loyalty, and the very nature of human power. Empires needed people they could truly count on, even when no one was watching, even when there were chances for personal gain. And when that trust broke down, when officials chose themselves over the empire, even the strongest walls and largest armies couldn't save them. It shows us that true strength isn't just about force, but about the connections and promises people keep, even far away. Was the old way of doing things good enough? Have you ever wondered why we change things? Not just small choices, but big shifts in how entire societies work. It's a question echoing through history. Is what we're doing now, the way we've always done it, truly good enough? Sometimes, the answer seems simple. If it works, why fix it? But often, a quiet feeling starts, a sense that maybe a better path exists. This isn't about disrespecting the past. It's about looking forward, with open eyes, at what could be. Consider ancient empires, once powerful. They had established systems and rules, passed down for generations. People farmed, governed, and built in familiar ways. For a long time, it worked. Yet, new challenges arose. Climate shifts made old farming useless. New ideas challenged old, unfair laws. Or new technology emerged. Empires faced a choice: cling to tradition, or risk everything new. Many chose the old, even when it wasn't working. Others dared to adapt. Think about how we used to find directions. Before smartphones and GPS, you probably used a big paper map. It worked, mostly, but it was clunky, hard to read, and couldn't tell you about traffic. Was it good enough? Yes, for its time. Then someone imagined a better way. GPS technology developed. Now, we type an address, and a voice guides us. The old map was okay, but the new way made travel safer, faster, and simpler. It showed that even good enough could be better. This question isn't just for history books. It's about every choice we make. It asks us to be thoughtful, to consider if comfort in the familiar stops us from growing. It helps us understand that good enough might prevent us from reaching great. Sometimes, empires, like people, struggle because they stop asking if old ways truly serve their future. Did they ignore the warning signs? Did anyone see it coming? Before a mighty empire crumbled, before a big change shook the world, were there whispers, small tremors? This is about warning signs. They are like quiet signals, tiny cracks that show up long before a big wall falls down. For empires, these signs might be small problems growing bigger, or certain beliefs starting to fade. Think about history. Empires often didn't just disappear overnight. There were always signs. Maybe the people were unhappy. Maybe leaders made bad choices for a long time. The wise thinkers of the past often spoke about how important it was to notice these early troubles. They knew that if you ignored a small issue, it would likely become a giant one. It's not about fate, but about choices. Did they see the dust on the horizon, or were their eyes fixed only on their golden palaces? Here's the thing. It's like when your phone starts acting slow. Maybe an app keeps crashing, or the battery drains too fast. These are small warning signs that something bigger might be wrong. If you ignore them, eventually your phone might just stop working entirely. Or, think about a bridge. Engineers constantly check for tiny rust spots or cracks. They don't wait for the bridge to collapse before they act. They know those small imperfections are telling them something important. So, the question isn't always why did it fall, but why didn't they listen? It makes you wonder, what are the warning signs we might be seeing today, in our own lives, or in the world around us? And are we brave enough to truly see them, to really understand what they're trying to tell us, before it's too late? It's a deep thought, about paying attention, about wisdom, and about the quiet lessons history keeps trying to teach us. It reminds us that often, the answers were there, if only someone had been truly watching. Why did the distant lands rebel first? Have you ever wondered why, when big empires start to crumble, the first cracks often show up far away from the main city? It's a strange thought, isn't it? You'd think problems would begin right at home, closer to the source of power. But over and over in history, it's the lands farthest away that raised their flags of rebellion first. Here's the thing. Distance changes everything. When a ruler is far away, their power feels less strong, like a whisper that gets fainter the further it travels. The people in these distant places might feel like they're not really part of the empire, just controlled by it. They often don't see the same benefits, or maybe they face harsher taxes and rules that make no sense for their local lives. The leaders back in the main city often don't truly understand the daily struggles or unique needs of these far-off communities. They see them more as resources to take from, not as equal citizens with their own voices. Imagine trying to manage a massive group project, where some of your teammates live hundreds of miles away. You can't easily see what they're doing, and they can't easily tell you their concerns or challenges. Misunderstandings grow, and trust gets thin. So, when troubles come, like a famine, a disease, or an unfair new law, the people in distant lands feel it more acutely. They often don't have a voice that can easily reach the central government, and their pleas might be ignored. They feel used, forgotten, or worse, exploited. This feeling, that you're an outsider, that your unique needs aren't met, it slowly builds up. It becomes a quiet anger, and that anger, given enough time and enough unfairness, can turn into a powerful demand for real change, a deep desire to be truly free and make their own choices. It shows us that feeling connected and heard matters, no matter how far away you are. Could they build enough roads and bridges? This question digs deep. When a group grows into a massive empire, how do they stay together? It's like keeping hundreds of puzzle pieces connected, miles apart. This isn't just about rocks and wood, it's about connection. Here's the thing. An empire needs to move people, goods, and ideas. Armies must reach distant borders. Traders need to bring vital supplies. Messages, laws, and news have to travel to. If roads are bad, or rivers can't be crossed easily, these connections break down. Parts become isolated, like separate islands. The Romans, for example, understood this. They built thousands of miles of incredible roads, still famous today. These roads weren't just paths, they were lifelines. They allowed armies to respond to threats, ensured food reached cities, and helped spread Roman culture. But imagine the sheer effort. Think of the people, materials, and time, and then maintaining it, year after year, through harsh weather and constant use. That's the real challenge. Don't think about your own day, right? You walk hallways to classrooms, or use your school's Wi-Fi to connect online. What if the hallways were blocked, or the Wi-Fi kept cutting out in some rooms? Suddenly, it's hard to learn, hard to get where you need to go, hard to share information. It makes everything less efficient, right? A big system, like an empire, works the same way. So, for those ancient leaders, a critical question was always there. Could they build and maintain this immense network? Could they keep all the pieces linked, even across mountains and rivers and deserts? Because in the end, an empire's strength isn't just about its armies or its wealth. It's also about how well its people, its ideas, and its resources can flow, connect, and support each other from one end to the other. Was the emperor truly loved? When we think of emperors, we often imagine them sitting on grand thrones, surrounded by cheering crowds. But how can you ever really know if someone truly loved a ruler who held so much power? If your future, your very life, depended on pleasing a powerful person, wouldn't you act like you loved them? In ancient times, emperors, kings, and queens were often seen as gods. People would bow, praise them, and build giant monuments in their honor. But was that real love, or was it fear? Was it hope for a better life? Sometimes, people loved an emperor because he kept them safe, or because he brought wealth. They weren't loving the person, maybe, but what the person represented or provided. Imagine your school principal. Some students truly like them. Others just act respectful because, well, they're the principal. You wouldn't want to get in trouble, right? You likely wouldn't write a fan letter to them unless you genuinely admired them, not just feared detention. An emperor was like that, but on a much bigger, scarier scale. People had to show loyalty, or there could be serious consequences. So, when history books tell us an emperor was adored, we need to ask, by whom, and why? Was it a deep, personal affection, like for a friend or family? Or was it a necessary performance for survival? So, when a ruler seems popular, it's worth thinking about the different reasons why. It's a puzzle. Power can make people act in ways that hide their true feelings. The love an emperor received was often complex, a mix of genuine respect, hope, and sometimes a whole lot of unspoken fear. It makes you wonder how we ever truly know what's in someone's heart, especially when so much is at stake. Did they respect other cultures? Think about the biggest empires in history, the ones that spread across vast lands. Did they truly respect the people they conquered, with all their different ways of life? Or did they just see them as outsiders, maybe even as lesser? This isn't just a history question. It's a deep one about human nature and power. Respecting other cultures means more than just tolerating them. It's about genuinely seeing value in different beliefs, different customs, different languages. It's understanding that someone else's traditions are as real and important to them as your own are to you. Some empires, like ancient Rome, at times, tried to weave new cultures into their own fabric. They allowed people to keep some of their old ways, but also expected them to adopt Roman laws and language. Other empires, though, tried to erase everything different, forcing everyone to be exactly the same. And that, almost always, created huge problems down the road. Here's the thing. Imagine your school. What if every student had to wear the exact same clothes, eat only one type of food, and speak only one way, no matter where they came from? It would feel incredibly stifling, right? And kind of empty. But think about when students share their unique traditions, perhaps a new game from their home country, or a special holiday dish their family makes. Everyone learns, grows, and the school community becomes so much richer and more interesting. It's the same with empires. When an empire crushed other cultures, it often lost out on new ideas, clever inventions, and fresh ways of thinking. It became rigid, like a dry tree branch, brittle and easy to snap. When an empire didn't respect different cultures, it sowed seeds of anger and resentment. People felt like their very identity was being stolen, their heritage dismissed. And that painful feeling, building up over generations, could carve deep cracks in even the mightiest empire. It teaches us that true power isn't just about how much land you control or how big your army is. It's about how well you can truly live with differences. It's about building something strong not by crushing diversity, but by embracing it. Because a society that understands and values all its unique pieces is much harder to break apart. Why did the slaves rise up? Have you ever felt truly trapped, like you had no choices, no say in your own life? What makes a person, pushed to their very limits, finally stand up and say no more? Slaves, through history, were people. They were denied everything we consider basic: their freedom, their family, their future, even their own name. They were treated as property, not as human beings. But here's the thing, you can try to break a person's body, but it's much harder to break their spirit. Even under the most terrible conditions, a deep longing for freedom lives inside us all. It's a powerful human truth. Think of it like a volcano. Deep beneath the surface, there's immense pressure building up. For a long time, the ground might seem still, but all that heat and gas, all that energy, it doesn't just disappear. It builds and builds, searching for a way out. Eventually, if the pressure gets too great, it has to erupt. It's an unstoppable force. In the same way, the pressure of lost freedom, of being owned, of constant cruelty, builds up inside people. They might wait for the right moment. They might plan in secret, but eventually, the longing to be free, to reclaim their humanity, becomes a force that can no longer be contained. It's not just about wanting a better life. It's about demanding the life that was stolen from them. These uprisings were not just acts of anger, but profound declarations that their lives mattered, and that they deserved to be truly, fully human. They were asking the deepest question of all: am I not a person? Could they recover from that big defeat? When an empire faces a crushing defeat, a loss so big it shakes everything, a quiet question rises from the dust: can they truly recover? This isn't just about losing a battle or a land, but a deep wound to their spirit, their belief in themselves. Imagine a team that's always won, suddenly losing a major championship. Their confidence shatters. For an empire, it's like that, but on a massive scale. Their people might wonder if their way of life, their leaders, even their core values, are still strong. Here's the thing: history shows us both paths. Some empires never quite get back up after such a blow. They might limp along for a while, but that single moment takes away their spark, their ambition, their will to lead again. Others, though, somehow find a hidden strength. They might change how they govern, or how they fight, or even what they believe in. It's not always about brute force. It's about a deeper kind of resilience, a question asked in the dark, and the answer they choose to live by. This helps you see why some empires lasted so long. Think about a time you worked incredibly hard for something, maybe a big school project, or a sports tryout, and it just didn't go your way. A real deep disappointment. You feel down, maybe even wonder if you're good enough. But after a while, you start to pick yourself up. Maybe you learn from what went wrong, or try a different approach, or find a new passion. It's not about pretending it didn't hurt, but about what you do after the hurt. Recovery isn't about erasing the past or forgetting the pain. It's about absorbing that hard lesson, that deep experience, into who you are. For an empire, or for a person, it means finding new ways to stand tall, even if the scars remain. It's a quiet testament to the enduring human spirit, always seeking to rebuild, to learn, to find light after the deepest shadows fall. That ability to heal, to adapt, to keep moving forward, that's the real strength, isn't it? Was the next invention coming too slowly? Have you ever felt stuck, really needing something, but it just doesn't exist yet? Maybe it's a new app that would make school projects super easy, or a cure for a sickness you worry about. We often think of history as a steady march forward, with one amazing invention leading to the next. But here's the thing: what if the really big, life-changing ideas didn't show up when they were most needed? What if the next important discovery was still hundreds of years away? And what if people were struggling with problems that a future invention would easily fix? This is a really deep question. It makes you wonder, did some empires, or even whole ways of life, fall apart just because the tools or knowledge they needed weren't invented fast enough? Think about ancient Rome. They built huge cities, but they didn't have modern plumbing or good ways to keep things clean. People got sick often. Germ theory, the idea that tiny, invisible things cause sickness, wouldn't be understood for over 1,000 years. Think of how many lives might have been saved. Think of how much healthier and stronger the empire could have been. If only that invention, that understanding, had arrived sooner. It's like trying to build an incredible, world-changing robot. You have some gears and wires, but you really need a special kind of battery that can last for months, and that battery just hasn't been figured out yet. So your robot can't truly do what it's meant to do. You know the perfect solution exists in your mind, but the real science isn't there yet. Empires often faced this. They had big plans and huge challenges, but the main missing piece, the invention that could solve things, was just out of their reach. So, was it always about people failing, or sometimes just about the clock moving too slowly? The world often waits for its smartest thinkers. Sometimes the next big answer isn't ready, not because no one is smart enough, but because the smaller steps needed before it haven't happened yet. It reminds us that progress is often slow and patient, built piece by piece. It doesn't always rush to meet our needs. It makes you wonder what crucial inventions we are waiting for right now, without even knowing it. Did the wealthy pay their fair share? Have you ever wondered about fairness, especially when it comes to money? Is it right for some people to have a lot, while others struggle? And how does that affect everyone? This isn't a new question. For thousands of years, in every big empire, leaders faced this very same puzzle. Think about it. An empire needs money. It needs money to build grand roads, to keep its armies fed and ready, to provide services for its people. And usually, that money came from taxes. The big question was always, who pays what? Should everyone pay the same amount, or should those with more contribute a bigger share? In places like ancient Rome or the mighty dynasties of China, this was a constant debate. Often, the very wealthy found ways to avoid paying their full portion. They might have special deals, or their power helped them slip through the rules. So, what happened? The burden usually fell harder on the everyday people, the farmers and shopkeepers, who had less to begin with. Or, the empire simply didn't have enough money to fix problems, to build new things, or to keep everyone safe. Here's the thing. Imagine you're doing a big group project for class. Everyone needs to work together to get a good grade. But what if a few people in the group, maybe the ones who have the best computers or access to the best research tools, decide they don't need to do much, and the rest of the group, who might have fewer resources, end up doing almost all the work? How would that make you feel? It wouldn't feel fair, right? You'd probably lose trust in your teammates, and maybe even the project itself. That feeling, that loss of trust, is a powerful thing. When people in an empire felt that the rich weren't paying their fair share, it wasn't just about money. It was about justice. It was about whether everyone was truly part of the same team, working towards a common future. When that sense of shared effort disappeared, when the idea of us started to crumble, even the strongest empires found their foundations shaking. Because deep down, every society needs to feel like everyone is contributing, and that the load is shared, truly and honestly. Why did the water dry up? Have you ever wondered why some things, once so full of life, just seem to vanish, like a thriving garden turning to dust, or a busy street suddenly empty? When we ask, why did the water dry up? We're not always talking about literal rain. Sometimes, the water is a hidden force, an essential thing that keeps something alive and strong. Think about it. An empire isn't just buildings and armies. It's also built on trust, on shared ideas, on the belief that things will keep working. These are the unseen waters that truly make a society grow. History shows us this again and again. Empires didn't always fall because of a huge battle. Often, the water dried up inside first. Maybe leaders stopped listening to their people, or the systems that brought food and opportunities just broke down. That shared belief in their future, that vital unseen force, slowly faded. Here's the thing, you can see this in your own life. Imagine a school club that starts with lots of excitement. Everyone is there, laughing, making plans. But what happens if leaders stop showing up, or members stop helping out? Slowly, the energy leaves. The meetings get smaller. The club doesn't suddenly explode. Instead, it just dries up. The fun, the purpose, the shared effort, that invisible water, it's gone. And that's why it matters. When we think about why the water dried up, we're really asking, what vital part of us, or our group, or our world, did we stop caring for? What essential connection did we let slip away? It reminds us that what truly sustains us might not be what we can see, but the deeper currents of trust, care, and shared purpose. We need to remember to nourish these hidden waters. Could they unite all the different regions? Imagine your school. Now imagine your school suddenly added students from 5 other towns, each with their own traditions, their own slang, even different ways of thinking about school rules. How hard would it be to make everyone feel like they belong to one single, happy community? This is a huge question that haunted empires. An empire often grew by taking over new lands and new peoples. But here's the thing. These new groups weren't just empty spaces on a map. They had their own histories, their own gods, their own ways of life. For an empire to last, it couldn't just conquer them. It had to somehow unite them. They tried many things. Some empires used force, making people obey through fear. But fear is a weak glue. It breaks when power wavers. Others tried to offer benefits, like building roads or giving people new laws. But even with good roads and new rules, did a farmer in a faraway land truly feel like part of the empire, or did he just tolerate it? Think about a puzzle. You have many different pieces, all unique shapes and colors. If you just shove them together, they might touch, but they won't connect. To truly unite them, each piece needs to fit naturally, to feel like it belongs in that specific spot, creating a bigger picture. It's like that with people. You can't just force different cultures to become one. They often hold on to their roots tightly. People have a deep need to keep their identity, who they are and where they come from. So, the question isn't just could they conquer them, but could they make them want to be part of the same story? True unity isn't about erasing differences. It's about finding a shared purpose, a common dream, that's strong enough to hold many different hearts together. It's a constant effort, a quiet understanding, and maybe a bridge built with empathy, not just stone. And that's why it matters. Was the army too busy keeping peace at home? Have you ever stopped to think about what happens when the very protectors of an empire are needed inside its own borders? An army's most famous job is often to defend the nation, to stand strong against threats from other countries. But what if the biggest dangers aren't marching in from afar? What if there are problems brewing right there, within the empire's own land? Here's how it works. For many powerful empires, the army wasn't just on patrol at the edges of their territory. Sometimes, these soldiers were called upon to deal with unrest and trouble at home. This could mean putting down a rebellion from a group of unhappy citizens, stopping local groups of bandits who made travel dangerous, or even quelling riots in big cities. Imagine an empire so vast that different regions have different needs, sometimes clashing. When soldiers are constantly busy keeping peace inside the empire, it means fewer troops are available to guard the long, stretching borders. It means fewer watchful eyes on potential invaders, fewer strong arms ready to defend against an enemy coming from beyond. It's a bit like your own body's immune system. Its main job is to protect you from big, scary viruses or bacteria from the outside world. But if your body is always fighting off a constant low-level cold, or dealing with a lingering infection that just won't go away, a lot of its energy is used up internally. When a big, new flu virus comes along, your immune system might be too tired to spread thin, and too focused on the smaller internal battle to fully defend against the larger threat. This quiet, constant internal struggle can drain an empire over time. When its strength is turned inward, constantly focused on its own people and problems, it leaves the empire open and vulnerable. It makes us wonder about the true nature of power. Is an empire truly strong just because it has many soldiers, or does real strength also come from having a peaceful, unified home, so that its power can be focused outwards, where it's truly needed? A calm inside allows an empire to clearly see the world outside, making it less likely to fall. Did they invest in their own people? Have you ever thought about what truly makes something last? Not just for a moment, but for hundreds of years. It's not always the biggest army or the most sparkling treasure. History whispers a different idea, a quiet truth hidden in the rise and fall of great empires. A crucial question for them, and for us today, was this: did they truly invest in their own people? This isn't about giving handouts. It's about seeing every single person within a society, from the quietest farmer to the busiest craftsperson, from the youngest student to the oldest elder, as valuable. It means pouring resources into their education, ensuring they have good health, making sure they feel safe, and giving them real opportunities to grow and make their lives better. Some powerful rulers of the past focused on building huge monuments or conquering new lands. They often saw people as just tools for labor, or as numbers to be counted in their armies. But other leaders, the ones whose wisdom echoes even today, understood a deeper secret. A society is only as strong as its individual citizens. Think about a strong, healthy tree. You don't just water the leaves at the top. You need to nourish the soil around the roots, protect the trunk, and ensure every branch gets sunlight. If the roots are weak, if the soil is poor, the whole tree eventually weakens, no matter how green the leaves look for a while. It's the same with people in a society. If the basic needs and potential of its citizens aren't cared for, the entire structure starts to crack. So, when leaders truly put their energy into their people, into their minds, their well-being, their hopes and dreams, something powerful happens. People become more skilled, more creative, and more hopeful about their future. They feel a real sense of belonging and purpose. And when people feel valued and supported, they work harder, they think bigger, and they contribute with their whole heart's. Real strength isn't just in mighty walls or glittering gold. It's found in the nurtured spirit and blossoming potential of every single person. That quiet investment, over time, builds a foundation that can truly endure. Why did the outside world seem stronger? Have you ever felt like other groups just had a secret advantage you couldn't figure out? For big empires, it was sometimes like that, but on a much grander scale. They'd look out at the world beyond their borders and see other nations rising. These outsiders seemed to have more power, cleverer inventions, or just a clearer path forward. Here's the thing. Often, it wasn't just about armies clashing. Many times, an empire grew so big, so comfortable, that it stopped looking for new ways to do things. It focused inward, on its own traditions and rules. The world outside didn't stop, though. Other groups, smaller kingdoms, or even just tribes, were constantly trying new ideas. They had to innovate to survive. They built different kinds of ships, developed new weapons, or found smarter ways to farm. They learned from their mistakes faster because they had less to lose. Imagine you're really good at drawing with pencils. You've always done it that way. But then, a new art class starts, and some kids are experimenting with digital painting, using layers and undo buttons. Their art might suddenly seem to appear faster, or look more vibrant, even though you've spent years perfecting your pencil skills. It's not that your art is bad, it's just that they found a different tool, a different way of creating that gives them a new kind of power. So, when empires saw the outside world seemingly pull ahead, it was often because that outside world was more agile, more willing to try new things. They were like those digital artists, not stuck in one way of thinking. The deep lesson here is that real strength often comes from curiosity, from being willing to change, and from never quite believing you already know everything. It's about keeping your eyes open to new ideas, no matter where they come from. And that's a power that truly lasts. Could they still produce enough goods? Have you ever wondered what happens when a group, or even an entire empire, gets too big for its britches? I mean, really, too big. Imagine a vast empire, stretching for miles, full of people. They need food, clothes, tools, places to live. But here's the thing, all that stuff doesn't just appear. Someone has to make it. Someone has to grow it. One deep question that haunted empires of the past was simple. Could we still make enough stuff for everyone? Think about the Roman Empire. It was huge. It had millions of people. Feeding them all, especially the armies, was a constant, massive problem. They needed grain, but bad weather or wars could stop the supply. If people were hungry or couldn't get what they needed, they got upset. And when enough people get upset, things can get messy, fast. It's like planning a big party for your entire grade. You promised everyone pizza and drinks. But then, on the day, the pizza oven breaks, and you only have half the soda. Suddenly, your awesome party isn't so awesome. People are hungry, thirsty, and maybe a little annoyed. They might leave, or complain. It shows how even the biggest, most powerful plans rely on the basics. Can you produce what you promised? Empires are like a giant living thing. They breathe, they grow, they need to be fed. If the production system, the farms, the workshops, the trade routes can't keep up with the people's needs, that living thing starts to starve. It's a quiet rot, not a loud battle. And it reminds us that even the grandest ideas depend on the simple, everyday act of making things work and making enough for all. Was the leadership getting too old? It's a strange question to ask, isn't it? Can a person be too old to lead? Think about a mighty empire, standing strong for centuries. It faces new challenges all the time. But here's the thing, leaders, like all of us, get older. And as they do, sometimes their minds become less open to new ideas. They might stick to old ways of doing things, ways that worked in the past but don't fit the present. Imagine a really old tree. Its roots are deep, its branches spread wide. It's seen many seasons. That's like an experienced leader, full of wisdom. But what happens if the climate changes dramatically, or a new type of disease appears? An old tree might not be able to bend or adapt quickly enough. It's set in its ways. The younger, more flexible trees might have an easier time adjusting. This isn't about disrespecting elders, far from it. Experience brings so much, but the world keeps moving. New technologies arrive, new cultures rise, new problems pop up. An empire needs leaders who can see these changes coming. They need to be able to shift their thinking, even if it means letting go of traditions that once felt sacred. Think of it like an old cell phone. It still works for calls, maybe, but can it run the new apps everyone uses? Can it connect to the fastest internet? Probably not. It's not broken, it just wasn't built for today's world. Empires often faced this. Their leaders, perhaps wise in old battles, struggled to understand new threats or opportunities. Maybe a rival kingdom had new weapons, or new trade routes opened. If the leaders couldn't grasp these shifts, the empire might start to crumble. Not from a direct attack, but from a slow inability to keep up. So, the question isn't just about age itself. It's about whether leaders, regardless of their years, can stay curious. Can they still learn? Can they accept that what worked yesterday might fail tomorrow? Sometimes, an empire falls, not because its leaders were bad, but because they simply couldn't imagine a different way forward. It's a quiet tragedy, the world moving on while a powerful system remains stuck in time. Did they take on too many wars? Imagine a powerful kingdom, its armies marching to victory, yet it begins to falter. Why? One big question is, did they take on too many wars? This isn't just about winning battles. Here's the thing, it's about what fighting does to a society, even a winning one. Think about ancient empires, like Rome. It grew huge by conquering lands, but keeping those lands, defending vast borders, and fighting constant wars meant endless costs. Not just money, but people too. Soldiers were needed, yes, but also farmers and builders. War pulls these vital people away from essential tasks back home. It's like when you try to juggle too many things at once. Maybe you have school, sports, and a club. Each one alone is fine, but trying to do them all perfectly, all the time, makes you tired and stressed. You spread your energy too thin. An empire does something similar when it's always at war. Its most important resources, money, soldiers, and even the spirit of its people get worn down. The nation becomes exhausted. Every war, big or small, takes something essential away. It demands resources, sacrifices, lives, and pulls focus from things like building roads or educating children. Even victories come with a hidden, heavy price. An empire might look strong, but if its people are tired, its money gone, and its fields empty because everyone is fighting, it's weakening from the inside. So here's what happened. The question of too many wars isn't just about military strategy, it's about balance. It's about how much strain a society can truly bear before it cracks. Not from one enemy, but from the never-ending weight of its own ambition. Why did the people feel hopeless? Have you ever felt truly stuck? Like nothing you did could make things better? That feeling, on a huge scale, can lead whole societies to crumble. It's not just about being sad. It's a deep, heavy sense that the future is already written, and it's not good. Think about it. An empire might seem strong on the outside. Great walls, powerful armies, but if the people inside stop believing, if they lose faith in their leaders, or in their own ability to change things, then what? When taxes get too high, or food runs out, or there's constant war, hope can slowly drain away. Here's the thing, leaders often promise a better tomorrow, but if that tomorrow never comes, if conditions only get worse year after year, then the stories of glory and strength start to feel like lies. People begin to see their lives as endless struggle. They might feel forgotten, or even betrayed, by the very system meant to protect them. Imagine you're trying to learn a really hard skill, like playing a complex song on an instrument, or mastering a difficult trick in a sport. You practice and practice, but you keep failing. At first you might get frustrated, but if you fail over and over, with no improvement, no matter how hard you try, you might just give up. You might start to think, I'm not good enough, or this is impossible. That's a tiny glimpse of how large groups of people can feel when facing impossible challenges for too long. When that feeling spreads through a society, it becomes a quiet force. It weakens the bonds that hold people together. People stop caring about the greater good because their own good seems out of reach. They stop fighting for change because change feels futile. And when a people stop hoping, when they lose their will to strive for something better, even the grandest empire can begin to crack from within. Not with a loud crash, but with a slow, mournful sigh. Could they stop the spread of rumors? Have you ever tried to catch a whisper? Imagine it, just floating in the air, barely there, then suddenly, it's everywhere. That's a bit like trying to stop a rumor. A rumor is a piece of information, often untrue or unconfirmed, that spreads from person to person. It grows, it changes, and it can become very powerful. Even great empires, for all their strength, struggled with this constantly. Think about ancient Rome, or other old kingdoms. News didn't travel by internet or TV, it moved through markets, public baths, and street talks. A whisper about a general's defeat, a coming famine, or a plot against the emperor could cause huge unrest. These weren't just idle stories. They could spark rebellions, ruin reputations, or make people lose faith in their leaders. Rulers tried to control what was said. They'd ban certain talks, punish rumormongers, but the human desire to share and believe made it hard. It's a lot like how a common cold spreads through a school. One person sneezes, and soon, many people are feeling sick. A rumor is like that, but for ideas. One person says something, and if it's interesting or alarming, it passes quickly. Even if it's false, it can stick. People might not check if it's true. They just pass it along because it sounds exciting or fits what they already fear. Here's the thing. The real challenge wasn't just silencing the talk, but changing what people believed. Rumors show us how fragile truth can be when fear or excitement takes over. They remind us how our shared stories shape our world, sometimes for good and often for ill. So, the question isn't if they could stop words, but if they could stop the deeper reasons people embraced those words. It's a deep problem, even today. Was the empire too big to communicate? Have you ever wondered if an empire could just lose its voice? Think about it. When an empire stretches across vast lands, from scorching deserts to frozen mountains, how does a ruler in the capital speak to a soldier on a distant border? This isn't just about sending letters. It's about a fundamental question. Can a vast group of people stay truly connected? For many ancient empires, communication was slow. So slow it was almost a whisper, lost in a storm. A message from Rome to its furthest provinces could take weeks, even months. Imagine, a decision made today, meant to solve a problem, might arrive too late, or when the problem has already changed. Here's the thing. By the time news reached the capital about a rebellion, that rebellion might have already grown huge. By the time orders went back, the situation could be entirely different. It's like playing a giant game of telephone across continents. You whisper a secret to one friend, who whispers to another, and by the time it gets to the end of the line, the message is often twisted, or even completely wrong. Now imagine that secret is a vital command, a tax law, or a peace treaty. The original meaning gets lost. Trust breaks down. People feel forgotten or misunderstood. They might start to believe that their leaders don't care, or don't even know what's happening, and that's why it matters. Empires need to feel like one body, working together. But when the signals are weak, when the messages don't arrive clearly or quickly, the different parts of that body start to drift apart. The connections become fragile, like thin threads snapping one by one. It's a quiet unraveling, not a loud war, but a slow fading of understanding, until what was once a mighty empire becomes just a collection of separate lands, no longer bound by a shared voice. Did they rely on one powerful person too much? Imagine a whole empire, its future, its very breath, resting on the shoulders of just one person. This sounds great, maybe, at first. A strong leader, a clear vision. But here's the thing. What if that one person makes a mistake? What if they get sick? What if they die suddenly? History tells us this can be a quiet, dangerous question. Many great empires rose with incredible leaders. Think of someone like Alexander the Great. He built a massive empire quickly, but after he died young, his empire shattered into many pieces. Why? Because so much of it depended on him. The systems weren't strong enough on their own. The ideas of how to run things weren't shared widely. It was his genius, his will, that held it together. When he was gone, the glue disappeared. It's a bit like a sports team that relies completely on one superstar player. They score all the points, make all the big plays. The team wins because of them. But what happens if that star player gets injured or moves to another team? The whole team can fall apart. The other players might be good, but they haven't learned to carry the weight together. They weren't prepared to lead, to innovate, to keep winning without that one person guiding every step. So, the question isn't just about a leader's strength, but about the strength of the system they build. Does it empower many, or just one? Does it prepare for tomorrow, or only live for today's genius. True strength, maybe, comes not from one mighty peak, but from a wide, stable mountain range, where many parts support the whole, ready for whatever winds may blow. Why did their trading partners turn away? Have you ever wondered why a really good friendship might just fade away? It's a lot like that with countries, especially empires and their trading partners. For an empire to be strong, it needed other lands to buy and sell. They were deeply connected, like a huge network. But here's the thing. Trade isn't just about goods, it's about trust and reliability. Imagine an empire getting greedy, demanding higher prices, or delivering poor quality, or constant wars making trade routes too dangerous. Doing business with them just isn't worth the trouble. When an empire starts to crumble inside, corrupt leaders, unhappy people, that instability spills over. Other countries worry. Can we really count on them? Think about a school project. If one person always promises to do their part but never does, or only cares about their own grade, what happens? Soon, no one wants to work with them. You look for dependable classmates. Empires are no different. Their partners look for reliability and fair deals. It shows us that even powerful empires weren't truly alone. They relied on others. When they stopped being good partners, becoming unreliable or unfair, those vital connections weakened. It's a quiet kind of turning away, a slow fading of trust. Sometimes, that quiet turning away can be just as powerful as an invading army. In bringing down a great power, it's a deep reminder that relationships, even between nations, need constant care and respect. Could they prevent the next natural disaster? Imagine a giant storm brewing far out in the ocean, or the earth beneath your feet starting to tremble. Can we really stop these powerful forces of nature? It's a deep question, one that has echoed through time. For centuries, people watched as floods swept through towns, as volcanoes erupted, or as droughts withered crops. They always wondered, could we have stopped it? Could we control the very ground we stand on, or the sky above us? In ancient times, people often believed these events were messages from gods, or part of some grand, unstoppable cosmic dance. They didn't try to stop a volcano. They honored it, perhaps built homes away, or offered prayers. But as knowledge grew, we started to understand the patterns. We learned about tectonic plates, about weather systems. We built dams to hold back rivers and early warning systems for tsunamis. But this isn't about stopping nature. It's about understanding it better, about preparing. Here's the thing. Trying to stop a hurricane from forming is like trying to stop your own heartbeat. You can monitor it, you can feel it, but you can't just make it cease. The earth is a living, breathing system, constantly shifting and changing. A natural disaster is just one of its big, powerful breaths. So, where does that leave us? It means we learn to live with this power. We don't control the ocean, but we learn to sail its currents. We don't stop earthquakes, but we build houses that flex with the ground's movement. The real lesson isn't about trying to control nature. It's about finding wisdom in our place within it. It's about building strong communities that help each other when disaster strikes. It also means truly understanding how much we rely on this planet, even with all its wild power. This reminds us of our small, connected place in a vast, amazing world. Was the ruling family too busy fighting itself? Have you ever seen a family argue so much they forget everything else? Imagine that kind of argument at the very top of an empire, within the ruling family. Here's the thing. When an empire is run by a single family, their personal struggles often become everyone's problem. Instead of working together to make good laws or protect their people, they might be busy fighting over power. One brother might want the throne, while another plots against him. This isn't just a small squabble, it's a battle for control. Often with lives on the line. When those in charge are focused on internal battles, they can't see real threats outside. They ignore problems like hunger or invading armies. Think of a sports team. If the players are always yelling at each other and not passing the ball, they lose the game, right? It doesn't matter how talented they are if they're not a unified team. This is what happened in many empires. The Roman Empire, for instance, had emperors more afraid of their own relatives than of outside invaders. Royal families in Europe often went to war over who had the rightful claim to a throne, dividing their strength. These internal fights can drain an empire, stealing its energy and focus, and that's why it matters. A house divided often falls. True strength isn't just about power, but about working well together, even with those closest. The deepest dangers can come from within, whispered in the halls of power. It's a quiet kind of decay, born from jealousy, leading to a slow fading into history for empires and communities alike. Did the people believe the official news? Have you ever wondered what people believed before the internet, before TV, before even printed newspapers? Back then, news came from official sources, a king's messenger, a priest, or words carved into a stone pillar. These messages were the official story, the one the powerful wanted everyone to hear. But here's the thing. Did the common person, the farmer or the builder, truly believe every word? Think about it. Emperors and rulers built grand stories about themselves, their gods, and their victories. These stories were meant to show how strong and rightful they were. If people believed these tales, they would trust their leaders, follow their laws, and fight their wars. But what if the crops failed? What if a battle was lost? The official news might say everything was fine, but people could see with their own eyes. They would hear whispers from travelers, or from neighbors who'd been to other towns. This created a silent tension, a quiet question in people's minds. Is what I'm told true, or is there another reality? It's a bit like when you hear a story from a classmate, and then you hear a different version from a teacher. You have to decide which one makes more sense, which one feels more real to you. On a grand scale, for empires, this question was everything. If enough people stopped believing the official story, if they felt lied to, then the ruler's power would start to crack. Trust is like the invisible glue holding a society together. When that glue starts to melt, everything can fall apart, no matter how strong the walls or armies might seem. So, the question of belief wasn't just about news, it was about the very foundation of an empire. Why did the best minds leave the capital? Have you ever thought about why smart, creative people might pack up and leave a place, even if that place is powerful and rich? It's a strange thought, right? You'd think the best minds would want to be at the center of everything, but history shows that when empires weaken, one sign is their brightest thinkers, artists, scientists, engineers, begin to leave the capital. They just move away. This isn't just about better jobs elsewhere. It's often about something deeper changing in that society. A society needs fresh ideas to grow, to solve problems, to stay strong. It needs people who question, who invent, who create beauty. When a place stops welcoming new thoughts, or people for speaking truths, or no longer values pure learning and art, then those who thrive on such things will look for another home. It's like a garden. If the soil turns bad, or there's no sunlight, the most delicate and beautiful plants, the ones that need specific care to bloom, will simply not grow there anymore. They'll find a better garden. Or think of a video game team. If the boss stops listening to the designers, or forces them to make boring games, the creative ones will probably leave for a different studio where their ideas are welcomed. The company might keep making games, but they won't be as good, not as fresh, not as exciting. The life goes out of it. So when the best minds leave the capital, it's a quiet alarm bell. It tells us a society might be losing its way. It's not just losing smart people. It's losing the very spark that lights new paths, solves big challenges, keeps hope alive. It suggests leaders might value power more than truth, or control more than creativity. And when a society loses its brightest sparks, its future dims. It's a sad thing to consider, isn't it? A place slowly losing its heart and its future, not to an invasion, but to its own choices. Could they enforce their laws everywhere? Think about it. Does a rule made in one place always work the same way everywhere else? Imagine your school principal announces a new rule for everyone. But what if that rule feels impossible to follow? For students who are far off in a specific, distant classroom, or during an after-school club where no one is really watching, this is a question empires faced all the time, but on a massive scale. Here's the thing. Ancient empires were huge. We're talking about lands that stretched for thousands of miles, across different climates, mountains, and deserts. The people living in these places weren't all the same either. They had their own customs, their own beliefs, and their own ways of life that had been around for centuries. So, a king or emperor in a grand capital city might make a law, like everyone must pay this new tax, or everyone must worship this god. But how did that law truly reach every small village? How was it enforced in a province that took months to travel to? Often, it didn't work perfectly. Messages traveled slowly, by horse or ship. Local leaders might interpret the laws differently, or ignore them if it suited them. Sometimes, the empire had to make special deals, letting distant areas keep some of their old ways, just to keep them from rebelling. It's like trying to enforce a dress code in a video game that has millions of players across different servers. You can set the rule, but players in far-off quiet corners might just wear whatever they want, because who's really checking? This question goes deep. A law isn't just words on paper. Its true power comes from how far it can be felt and fairly applied. When laws can't reach everywhere, or when people feel they don't apply to them, trust starts to break down. The far-off villagers might begin to feel like they are not really part of the empire, or that its rules don't matter to them. And that lack of connection, that feeling of being outside the system, can slowly but surely weaken an empire from within. Was the army getting paid enough? Have you ever thought about what keeps a soldier fighting, day after day? It's a deep question. We often think empires rise and fall because of battles or great leaders. But here's the thing, an empire's real strength often came from something simpler, something very human. It was about the soldiers, risking their lives. A huge question for them was, were they getting paid enough? This wasn't just about coins. It was about food for families, a safe home, and feeling valued. When an empire's leaders kept soldiers well paid and respected, armies were loyal and effective. They fought with purpose. Think about the Roman Empire. Their legions were powerful. That power came from discipline, yes, but also from trust. Soldiers knew they'd be cared for. They got good pay, land after service, and honor. But over time, as the empire faced problems, army money ran out. Emperors became unfair. Here's what happened. Soldiers lost loyalty. They didn't fight as hard. Some even turned on leaders or listened to generals who promised more. This wasn't a small problem. It was like cracks forming in the empire's foundation. It's like a big team project at school. Imagine students doing all the work, getting no fair credit or materials. How would they feel? They might stop trying. They might even cause problems for the group. Now, imagine that feeling, but for thousands of soldiers, with an empire's safety on the line. So this question, was the army getting paid enough, goes far beyond money. It touches on human dignity, loyalty, and why people serve. It shows us that even the biggest systems depend on the well-being and trust of the people who make them up. When that trust breaks, empires can crumble, not from an enemy at the gates, but from within. Did they learn from past mistakes? It's a simple question, right? After a big problem or a fall, you'd think people, or whole nations, would look back. They'd study what went wrong, and try to make sure it never happened again. History, after all, is a great teacher. But here's the thing. Just because the lessons are written doesn't mean everyone truly understands or applies them. Empires faced many of the same problems repeatedly. Too much pride, not listening to all voices, pushing their people too far. These aren't new issues. Go back thousands of years, and you'll find stories of rulers who made choices that looked a lot like mistakes made by others centuries before them. It's like seeing a pattern repeat. The question isn't just if the information was there, but if they truly reflected on the deeper questions that could have saved them. Think about playing a challenging video game. You try to beat a level and fail. Maybe you keep running into the same trap. If you just hit restart and do the exact same thing, you'll probably fail again, right? You have to pause, remember what didn't work, and try a different strategy. That's learning from a past mistake. For empires, it was much harder. The game was real, stakes incredibly high. Leaders were sometimes too caught up, or believed their situation was unique. So, did they learn? Sometimes, yes. We see examples where societies did adapt after a crisis, but often, the same old human errors crept back in. Perhaps it's a quiet reminder to us all. The lessons of history aren't just for old books or ancient empires. They're for us, too. They gently ask us, what can we learn from the challenges that came before, so we don't repeat missteps in our own lives or in our time? The wisdom isn't in having all the answers, but in continually asking the question itself. Why did the celebrations stop? You know that feeling, when you've worked so hard for something, maybe a tough exam or a big sports game, and then, finally, it's over. You won, or you did great. There's this huge burst of relief, of pure, loud joy. Confetti might as well be raining down. For a moment, everything feels perfect. But here's the thing about those big, loud moments. They don't last forever. The cheers fade. The The confetti settles to the ground, and then, often, there's a quiet, a kind of stillness, where a new set of questions starts to rise. This is true for people, and it was certainly true for the mighty empires of history. Think of an empire after a huge victory. They might have conquered a new land, or crushed a long-standing enemy. There would be parades, feasts, and shouts of triumph for weeks. But underneath all that noise, the real work, and the real problems, were just beginning. Who would govern this new land? How would they pay for the war, which cost so much gold and so many lives? Would the new people they ruled truly accept them, or would new rebellions simmer just below the surface? The victory, grand as it was, often just opened the door to even bigger, harder questions. It's a bit like when you finish a giant puzzle. You finally place that last piece, and you feel amazing. The picture is complete. But then, you look at the empty table beside it, and maybe you remember all the pieces that didn't quite fit, or the ones you almost lost, and then you think, what puzzle should I start next? The joy of finishing is real, but it also points you towards what comes after. So, the celebrations stop because life keeps moving, because even the greatest triumphs don't erase the future. They don't answer every question, but often, they reveal the next, deeper ones. It's in that quiet space, after the victory has been savored, that an empire, or any of us, must truly decide what to do next. It's where the real journey begins again, with new questions waiting to be asked. Could they fix the crumbling buildings? When you see an old wall covered in cracks, what do you think? Do you just plaster over them, hoping it looks good again? Or do you wonder, why are those cracks there? This isn't just about actual buildings, it's about the deeper things that hold a society together. Trust, shared beliefs, the way people treat each other. Empires, like buildings, can start to crumble from the inside long before any enemy shows up. The question, could they fix the crumbling buildings, wasn't just about bricks and mortar. It was about whether leaders could mend the broken trust, fix unfair rules, or restore a sense of fairness. It was about whether they could make people believe in the empire again, in its purpose, in its future. When the Roman Empire started to decay, it wasn't just its roads or aqueducts falling apart. It was a loss of faith in its leaders, a feeling that things weren't fair, that the old ways weren't working anymore. The outer cracks showed inner problems. Here's the thing. Imagine you're doing a big group project for school. Your team isn't talking, people aren't doing their part, and the whole thing feels messy. You might try to quickly add some nice pictures, or make the cover look great. But if the core problem is that no one is listening to each other, or the main idea is confusing, then all those quick fixes won't help. The project will still fall apart, because the real structure of the team is crumbling. So, when an empire faced its own crumbling buildings, the deeper question was rarely about more money or stronger walls. It was about something much harder to see, the loss of shared purpose, the slow fade of hope. It was about whether anyone even believed the building was worth saving anymore. And sometimes, the cracks were too deep, the trust too broken, to ever truly rebuild. Was their technology falling behind? Have you ever wondered if old ways, even if they worked for a long time, could eventually cause big problems for a whole society? This is a question often asked about great empires. They built amazing things, like pyramids or vast road networks. But here's the thing. Technology isn't just about building, it's also about staying current. It's about how quickly a group of people can accept new ideas or tools that others are developing. Sometimes, an empire might have excellent tools, but if others discover something truly different and better, that empire can quickly find itself at a disadvantage. Think about it like this. Imagine you're playing a video game. For years, you've used a certain strategy and a certain character, and you always win. But then, new updates come out. Other players find new characters with unique abilities, or they figure out ways to get an edge. If you keep playing the old way, sticking to your old character and strategy, even if it worked well before, you'll start losing. Your technology, your strategy and character isn't bad, but it's fallen behind what others are using. Empires faced similar choices. They might have perfected their old ways of farming, or their way of building ships, or even their battle tactics. But what if someone else invented a new kind of plow that made food cheaper, or a faster ship, or a weapon that changed warfare forever? It wasn't always about not having smart people. Sometimes, it was about a deep-rooted comfort. They liked how things were. They were used to their ways. So, the question isn't always did they invent enough, but rather, were they open enough to change? It's about how willing people were to let go of what was familiar and try something new, even if it seemed risky. A society that stops looking for new answers, or stops trying to improve, might slowly find itself left behind, not by a sudden collapse, but by a quiet shift in the world around them. It's a quiet challenge. How do we stay curious, and how do we stay open to new ideas, even when the old ones feel safe? Did they prepare for bad harvests? Imagine looking at the sky, day after day, waiting for rain that never comes, or seeing a sudden frost destroy everything just before it's ready. For ancient empires, this wasn't just a bad day, it was a question of life or death, a deep test of their wisdom. Did their leaders truly think about what would happen if the food simply ... stopped growing? Here's the thing, civilizations, no matter how powerful, relied entirely on their land to feed their people. A good harvest meant peace and growth. A bad one, year after year, could mean starvation, unrest, and the fall of a kingdom. It wasn't about fighting invaders. It was about battling nature itself, a silent, powerful force that cared nothing for kings. Did they build large granaries, giant storage buildings for grain, holding enough food to last years? Did they plan for when the river didn't flood, or when a new disease hit the crops? Think about it, like saving up for a rainy day, but on a massive scale. If you have a big project due, you don't just hope for the best. You start early, you gather your materials, you maybe even have a backup plan in case your computer crashes. It's about looking ahead, seeing potential problems, and taking steps to avoid disaster. This isn't just common sense. It's a deep kind of foresight, a wisdom that understands life isn't always stable. So many empires seem to forget this basic truth. They focused on wars, on grand buildings, on expanding power. But often, they overlooked the quiet, constant need for food, for water, for basic survival. A truly strong society isn't just about its armies or gold. It's about how well it protects its most vulnerable, how it prepares for hard times. It's about remembering that even the biggest empires are built on something as simple and as fragile as a tiny grain of wheat. Why did the outside world change so much? Have you ever thought about why the world around us never stays the same? It's a deep question. Here's the thing. The biggest changes often didn't come from a new army or a big storm, but from new ideas. Imagine a powerful empire, strong and old. For centuries, things were done one way. People believed certain things. But then, somewhere, a new thought sparked. Maybe it was a faster way to travel, a different way to grow food, or a new way to think about how people should be governed. Before the printing press, ideas moved slowly, like a whisper. A new idea might take years to cross a kingdom. But as roads got better, ships sailed farther. And especially when people could print books, these ideas spread like wildfire. Suddenly, an empire that had been stable found its foundations shaking. Why? Because the outside world was no longer so outside. New ways of doing things, new questions, and new beliefs were knocking on the door, or even walking right through it. Think about how a new song or a new dance trend spreads on social media today. One person posts it, then another, then suddenly everyone is doing it, and what was normal yesterday feels a bit old. That's a tiny version of what happened to empires. A new discovery in science, like understanding how gravity works, changed everything. It wasn't just about apples falling. It changed how people saw the entire universe, their place in it, and even their old beliefs. So, the outside world changed because the walls between inside and outside got thinner. Ideas traveled faster. And when new ideas meet old ways, things have to shift. It can feel unsettling, like the ground moving beneath your feet. But it's also how societies grow, adapt, and sometimes how new possibilities emerge from the dust of the old. It reminds us that change is not just something that happens to us, but something that also connects us, making the world a living, breathing story that's always unfolding. Could they protect against new weapons? Imagine a mighty empire, standing strong for centuries, its walls tall, its armies well-trained. They faced many enemies. But what happens when the very nature of war changes? What if a new weapon makes all defenses useless? This question has echoed through history, often signaling the end of powerful eras. An empire's strength often rested on its defense. They built huge forts, trained soldiers, believed their methods unbeatable. But here's the thing, human creativity never stops. Someone invents something new, perhaps a weapon that fires faster, hits harder, or reaches further. Old ways of fighting then became weak. It wasn't just about bigger armies. It was about having the right kind of defense for the new kind of attack. Think about when knights in shining armor were ultimate warriors. Their armor was thick, swords sharp. They were strong on a battlefield. But then, gunpowder arrived. A simple musket could pierce that heavy armor from a distance. A cannon could blast apart a castle wall built over years. The knight's strength became a weakness, easily defeated by new technology. The question became, how do we fight this? Can we survive this new reality? It's like when you learn a new video game. You get good at one character, mastering their moves and defenses. You feel unbeatable. But then, the game releases a new character with totally different powers, maybe one that can fly or shoot through walls. Your old strategies just don't work. You're left wondering how to approach this new challenge. Your practiced defenses are, suddenly, useless. For empires, these new weapons were more than just tools. They were questions. Questions about their power, their future, their ability to adapt. Could they learn new ways to fight? Could they change their system fast enough? The deepest challenge wasn't just the weapon, but the uncertainty it brought. It reminds us that even the strongest foundations can be shaken by the unknown. True strength often means being ready to learn and change, no matter how settled things seem. Was the dream of the empire still alive? When a powerful empire crumbles, do its grand ideas truly vanish? Or do they linger, like echoes in an empty hall? Here's the thing, an empire isn't just land and armies. It's often built on a big dream, a dream of order, or strength, or a specific way of life that its people believed in. Think about ancient Rome. Its buildings turned to ruins, its emperors long gone. But for centuries after, people in other lands still looked to Rome's laws and its art. They tried to build their own empires, hoping to capture some of that Roman greatness. The physical empire was dead, but the idea of Rome, that deep sense of what it meant, it kept inspiring people. This isn't just about old kingdoms. Think about a favorite band that breaks up. The band, as a group, is no longer together. The concerts stop, but their music still plays on the radio. Their songs still mean something to people. New bands get inspired by their sound. The feeling they created, the dream of that music, it finds new ways to exist. It changes shape, but it doesn't just disappear into thin air. So, when an empire falls, the questions don't always end with its last battle. Sometimes, the most important question is what happens to the whispers of its past. Does the desire for that lost power, that old glory, still live in people's hearts? Does it become a quiet longing, or a spark for something new? The dream might fade, but its shadow can stretch across time, showing us how deeply ideas can root themselves in the human spirit, long after the stones have fallen. Did they treat their conquered people well? It's a heavy question, isn't it? When one group, one empire, takes over another, what happens next? Do they crush them underfoot, or do they try to find a way to live together? Here's the thing, winning a war is one battle, but truly holding on to power, making an empire last for hundreds of years, that's a whole different challenge. History shows us empires that were incredibly harsh. They enslaved people, destroyed cultures, and stole everything. Think of the Assyrians, known for their cruelty. Their rule was often met with constant rebellion because people hated them. But then there were empires like the Romans, at least for a time, or the Persians. They often allowed conquered people to keep their religions, their local leaders, and even some of their laws, as long as taxes were paid and peace was kept. This approach sometimes led to more stability, a kind of uneasy peace instead of constant fighting. Imagine you and your friends are playing a new video game, and you're really good at it. You beat all the bosses, and your friend is still struggling. With the first level, you could brag and make them feel bad, or you could teach them, share tips, and make the game fun for both of you. If you're mean, they might quit playing with you, or even try to mess up your game. But if you help them, they become a stronger teammate, and you both enjoy the game more. It's kind of like that with empires. If you make the conquered people feel like part of something, even if they're not fully equal, they're less likely to fight back. So, how an empire treated those it conquered tells us a lot. It wasn't just about justice or fairness. It was also about smart choices. Did they choose fear, which burns bright but quickly fades? Or did they choose a path of integration, which might be slower, but could build something more lasting? The way they answered this question often decided if their empire would slowly crumble from within, or if it would adapt and endure for generations. It's a quiet lesson about human connection, even when power is involved. Why did the cities become too crowded? Have you ever wondered why so many people live in cities? Why do we naturally gather, squeezing into small spaces, instead of spreading out? For thousands of years, cities have been like giant magnets, pulling people in. What was that powerful force? Think back to old times. Most people lived on farms. Life was hard. Harvests could fail. So, people moved where they felt safer, or found jobs. A big river meant trade. A king built strong walls. As cities grew, they offered new things: specialized shops, busy markets, places to learn, and protection. If you made pottery or wove cloth, the city was where you sold it. Later, with big factories, this pull got stronger. Machines did farm work, so fewer people were needed on land. They left farms for city factory jobs. It was a simple trade, a steady wage for the unpredictable life of farming. Everyone went where new chances seemed to be. Imagine a popular video game server. When a new update or rare item appears, everyone rushes to that one spot. It gets crowded, right? People want the best gear, or to be part of the big event. Cities work like that. They'd become the spot where new chances, better lives, or more excitement gather. But here's the thing: when too many people gather, even good ideas run into trouble. Resources stretch thin. Space gets scarce. This strong pull, this natural hope for a better life, creates new challenges. It makes us wonder, when is enough truly enough? What happens when a community grows past its own walls, or its ability to care for everyone? That's a deep question, one empires often faced. Could they find new resources? Think about it. What happens when a big group of people, or even just one person, runs out of something they really need? Empires, like people, need things to live. They need food to feed their citizens, water to drink, and materials like wood or metal to build and create. When an empire uses up what it has, or when its population grows too big for its land, a huge question comes up. This wasn't just about finding more stuff. It was about survival. It was about whether an entire way of life could keep going. Many ancient empires faced this challenge. The Roman Empire, for example, needed vast amounts of grain to feed its massive cities. To get it, they expanded their lands, found new farms in places like Egypt and North Africa, and set up complex trade routes that stretched across the known world. But here's the problem. What if the next valley was empty? What if the trade routes became too dangerous, or the lands they depended on stopped producing as much? These were real worries. It's not just about running out. It's also about discovery and change. Sometimes, finding new resources meant bravely exploring unknown places, crossing vast oceans or deserts. It meant taking huge risks, hoping to find fertile land, valuable minerals, or new trade partners. This constant push to find more, to always have enough to sustain a growing population, deeply shaped how empires expanded and how they interacted with other cultures. Think of it like a very hungry, growing family. They need more food as the kids get bigger. At first, their garden might be enough, but soon, they need to buy more from the store, or find new land to plant more. What if the stores run out, or there's no more land to farm? This simple problem, scaled up to millions of people and vast territories, became a question of life or death for an empire. This question of could we find more wasn't just practical planning. It was a deep, unsettling thought. It forced people to confront limits, to consider bold explorations, and to figure out how clever they could truly be. It reminds us that everything has a source, and those sources are rarely endless. Empires learned this lesson the hard way. It shows how even the biggest, strongest societies can be brought to their knees by something as basic as not having enough of what they need to survive. Was the next generation of leaders ready? What happens when the greatest leader an empire has ever known steps down or passes away, or when a whole generation of wise people is gone? This is one of the most important questions any nation ever faces. It looks past today, asking about tomorrow. Was the next generation truly ready to pick up the mantle? Were they prepared for the immense weight of power and responsibility? Here's the thing. History shows us empires didn't always fall because of invasions. Sometimes, they crumbled from the inside. Often, those inheriting power weren't ready. Maybe they hadn't learned enough. Perhaps they grew up too comfortable, not understanding the struggles their parents faced to build everything. They might have gotten a giant, complex machine, but they didn't know how to run or fix it. They lacked vision or courage for tough choices. This isn't just about one person. It's about a whole group meant to guide everyone else. Think about a massive, beautiful bridge. It took years to build, with incredible skill. Now imagine the builders are gone, and a new crew must maintain it. But this new crew never learned the blueprints. They don't understand the stresses on the cables, or how to spot early rust. Soon, a small crack becomes a huge problem, and the bridge falters. The knowledge, wisdom, and experience they weren't passed on. So, the question isn't just about who could lead, it's about who was prepared to lead. It asks if those in power truly invested in the future, teaching, mentoring, and sharing their wisdom. Did they let the next generation learn lessons that make good leaders? When the old guard is gone, the future of everything rests on the shoulders of those who come next. If they aren't ready, the empire might be on shaky ground. It makes you wonder, doesn't it, what we're doing to prepare for our own tomorrows? Did the empire grow too fast? Have you ever thought about what happens when something gets too big, too quickly? Like a balloon filling, or a plant shooting up fast. Quick growth can bring trouble. When empires grew too fast, they spread their borders before they could truly control everything. Imagine a country grabbing land far away. It might look strong, but can it govern new people? Can it protect those new edges? This isn't just about land, it's about people, laws, keeping everyone connected. If an empire gets too stretched, its power becomes thin, like butter spread too much. Think about the Roman Empire. It grew to cover a huge part of the world. Here's the thing, the further it reached, the harder to manage. Messages took weeks. Generals needed armies too large to pay. New cultures joined, and sometimes they didn't follow Roman rules. It became hard to keep everyone united. Its sheer size made it clumsy, unable to respond quickly. Consider your favorite school club. If suddenly 100 new members joined, all wanting their say, it would be chaos, right? Hard to organize, decide roles, or even listen to ideas. You might have talent, but without good organization and a way to connect, the group could fall apart. It's not about more members, it's about how well you make them work together. So, the question isn't always can we get bigger, but can we truly manage what we gain? It asks if true strength comes from endless expansion, or from the deep, careful roots you plant. Sometimes, the wisest path isn't to reach further, but to hold what you have with strength and wisdom. Maybe some things are best grown with patience, not just speed. Why did no one see the end coming? Have you ever wondered how big changes, even the fall of mighty empires, can seem to sneak up on people? It's a deep question, because when we look back in history, it often feels obvious what went wrong. But for the people living through it, the end was rarely a sudden event. It was more like a slow, quiet, fading. Empires didn't just crash overnight. Think about the Roman Empire. It didn't just disappear in a single battle. Instead, it slowly weakened over hundreds of years. Problems like corruption, economic struggles, and internal fights nibbled away at its strength, little by little. People might have noticed small problems, but it was hard for them to see the whole giant picture collapsing around them. They were inside it, living their daily lives, too close to the forest to see it shrinking. Here's the thing. It's incredibly hard to see a slow change when you're right in the middle of it. Imagine you live by a river. Every day, the water might erode a tiny bit of the bank. You probably wouldn't notice it. You'd see the same river, the same trees, but over years and years, that tiny bit of erosion, happening daily, adds up. Eventually, the river could shift its course, or the bank could collapse, taking a house with it. No one saw the bank slowly vanishing each day, but the erosion was always happening. It's the same with big systems, whether it's an empire, a friendship, or even your own habits. The little choices, the small shifts, they accumulate. We get used to the way things are, even if they're slowly getting worse. We adapt without even realizing it. So, often, the end isn't a surprise to everyone. It's just that most people were too busy living inside the system to notice the ground slowly slipping away beneath their feet. It reminds us to always stay aware, to question, and to truly look at the quiet changes happening all around us.